Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Debany Escobar. These events took place in the state of Nuevo León, Mexico, on April 9, 2022. A disturbing image appeared on social media. In the photo, a young girl was standing on the side of the road. She was wearing a white top, brown shorts, and black Converse shoes, and her hair was down. The caption of the post with the photo said, "Yes, it's true." The girl's name was Debany Escobar. She was 18 years old. The last time she was seen was late on the night of April 9 after a party where she was with her friends. It all started on Friday, April 8, when Debany, a student at the Faculty of Law at the University of Nuevo León in Monterrey, decided to go for a walk with her friends. At about 11 p.m., she left her house. Two of her friends, Sarai and Vaughn, met her on Simon Bolivar Street to go to a party together. At 11:30 p.m., a CCTV camera from one of the stores recorded how the three girls were buying drinks. They were there for some time and then decided to go to the party just a few blocks away. However, upon arrival, they found themselves in an unpleasant situation, which led them to decide to go to another party taking place at the Quinta Diamante estate in General Escobedo. They ordered a taxi using the Didi app, which came to pick them up at 12:49 a.m. When they arrived at the location, it became clear that the party had already ended. However, the girls noticed that not far away, on the same street, another party was taking place, called Cantal Diamante. The surveillance Sierra footage shows the girls getting out of a white Kia Rio at 1:20 a.m. And only Sarai and Debany exited the car. A little later, they reached the entrance to the club. After 9 minutes, the camera filmed Debany walking in the opposite direction from the entrance. After a few seconds, she returned and everything seemed fine. But at 3:45 a.m., the camera recorded Debany running out of the club. A young man ran after her and tried to grab her. She hit him and tried to run away, but he did not let her. After that, they began to quarrel, and another guy came out to witness the altercation. After that, the girls called a familiar driver to pick them up. The driver informed her that he was nearby and would arrive in 10 or 15 minutes. A moment later, when the driver arrived, Debany got in the car, leaving her friends behind. Another camera recorded the car, showing that Debany was arguing with the driver. 8 minutes later, the driver sent a message to her friend stating that Debany had exited the car and refused to continue the ride. The driver informed that there had been an argument between him and Debany, due to which she chose to leave the car and did not want to return. He took the photo as proof that he left her on the side of the road. Debany's friends were uncertain about what to do next. They asked the driver to contact the police, but he declined, stating he had to leave for work. A few minutes later, he returned to the area, but Debany was no longer there. He informed her friends that she was missing and suggested that Debany appeared to be in poor condition, potentially under the influence of banned substance, as her speech was incoherent. The friends attempted to contact her parents, but no one answered. The conversation between the driver and Debany's friends ended at 5:16 a.m., and since then, they had not heard from her. The next day, Debany's friends were able to contact her father, Mario Escobar, they wanting to find out what had happened. Her parents were also unaware of the situation, and they promptly filed a report with the police. Photos of Debany were shared on social media, and a search effort began. On April 9, while authorities were looking for Debany, the body of a missing girl named Maria Fernanda Contreras was discovered in a house in the Apodaca area. This was one of 5 bodies found during the search for Debany. Within just 6 days, the remains of these 5 women were uncovered, which left the community in shock. 2 days after Debany went missing, a girl who was also at the party that Debany attended told on her Instagram that some people tried to help Debany and offered to take her home so that she could come to her senses. However, Debany's friend did not want this, since supposedly some trusted person was supposed to come for them, so the story took on a different character. Now Debany's friends were the main suspects. All this was very strange, and as time went on, the case became more and more complicated. At that point, the investigation had made little progress. On April 15, a reward of 100,000 Mexican pesos was announced for information about Debani. From this reward, the prosecutor's office in Nuevo León obtained a video showing Debani at 4:29 a.m., just 4 minutes after the driver had photographed her. In the video, she is seen walking toward the building of the international transport company Alcocia. She then crossed the road and approached the building's facade and vanished. With access to this video, it was believed that Debani might have gone to the transport company for help. However, the camera did not capture her entering or exiting the building. This was the last footage of Debani, leading to suspicions that the transport company could be involved in her disappearance. So, there was still hope of finding Debani alive. On April 19, the police initiated a search of the Alcocia company building. They examined all vehicles and accessed surveillance cameras, but found nothing of interest. Following this, they conducted a search in a residential building in central Monterrey, located 22 kilometers from where Debani was last seen. The police received tips that Debani's personal belongings were in apartment number 18. 2 days earlier, the GPS on her phone indicated activity in that location, as well as at the corner of the Nueva Castilla motel. The following day, police, volunteers, and canine units searched the nearby highway for evidence. They inspected a manhole in a vacant lot next to the Nueva Castilla motel. Additionally, workers from the Monterrey Water Service searched a manhole along the highway where she was last seen. However, at that point, the investigation had made little progress. At the request of Mario, a team from the National Search Commission was called in to assist with the search. That Thursday afternoon, a group of volunteers joined the effort. Police received reports from the staff at the Nueva Castilla motel about a foul odor coming from an unused tank. Officers quickly arrived at the scene, and within minutes, they discovered a body. Although it was initially unclear if the body belonged to Debani, divers confirmed that it was wearing the same clothes she had on the day she went missing. Mario identified her by a cross she was wearing. The police also requested security camera footage from the motel, but the staff claimed the cameras only displayed live footage and did not record. Meanwhile, Debani's body had been submerged in water for nearly 2 weeks, making it nearly unrecognizable and in a state of decomposition. Despite the clothing and accessories, DNA testing was necessary for identification. An autopsy conducted confirmed that the body was indeed Debani's, and the cause of death was determined to be a severe head injury by strong impact. Initial reports suggested that Debani's fall into the tank was not accidental, and her phone lost signal shortly after. There were no signs of violence on her body. The bruises might have been caused by a fall. However, there was swelling on her forehead and around her eyes, indicating inflammation from impact. At that time, it was believed that Debani could not have jumped over the 2-meter-high wall surrounding the motel to accidentally fall into a cistern that measured 90 by 98 centimeters and was 4.43 meters deep, with a water level of 90 centimeters. Because Debani was only 167 centimeters tall and the wall had barbed wire on top. Before the discovery, Debani's body, no one, including service dogs, noticed any unpleasant odors at the motel. Nueva Castilla had 3 tanks, with one of them clogged. In the first tank, where the body was found, they found her Converse sneakers and a piece of fabric with insects typically found on decomposing bodies. On the wall between the first and second tanks, a bag belonging to Debani was located. This bag contained a red plastic container, a white bra, 2 pieces of beige fabric, and a black and white fabric mask. In the second tank, investigators found a yellow and white lighter, 3 metal keys, a cell phone in a damaged black case, a wallet, and a plastic-wrapped gel-like substance. Conducting toxicology tests to check for alcohol or other substances in her system proved difficult. However, the presence of insects and worms feeding on the corpse might allow for DNA extraction to identify substances. The investigation agency analyzed that Nueva Castilla motel is not well known and appears abandoned from the outside. It sits along the highway leading to New Laredo, the main route between Monterrey and the United States. This highway has earned a reputation for danger, as approximately 1,000 people went missing there last year. They found no signs of a break-in near the tanks, leading them to conclude that Debani likely entered the motel through the main entrance of the restaurant. 2 days after the body was found, security camera footage from the motel was released. This was unusual because the staff had previously stated that the cameras only recorded in real time. The footage provided by the prosecutor's office shows the motel's restaurant and 2 glass doors, one facing the highway and the other leading to the tank area inside the motel. In the footage, Debani is seen entering the motel at 4:33 a.m. Another camera captures her running to the motel, going around the restaurant, and reaching the glass door. When she noticed no one was there, she dashed to the corner of the restaurant, where she stayed for about 20 minutes. Then, she ran again along the wall of the hotel. This was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. Following a review of the surveillance footage, the prosecutor's office requested that the motel be placed under check. Investigators discovered that an outdoor camera at a neighboring restaurant recorded a car parked at the Nueva Castilla motel, where a man entered. They was believed that this man took Debani away in that car. Days later, the car was identified, and the man who got in was also revealed. However, after being questioned, he was declared innocent of the case. Meanwhile, Mario sought external assistance to carry out a second autopsy and compare its findings with those of the first. Everyone was left wondering why Debani exited the taxi that was supposed to take her home. New footage that surfaced in the media suggested that her departure might have been prompted by harassment from the taxi driver. In the video, the driver is seen extending his right hand toward the girl's chest, leading to speculation that she left the car due to his inappropriate behavior. In response to these allegations, taxi driver Juan appeared in the media on April 27 to share his side of the story. In the interview, Juan David denied any harassment, explaining that the footage actually captured him handing Debani a phone charger because her phone battery had died. And he said his conversations with Debani's friend, he shared an audio recording he made while Debani was in his car. In the recording, she states, "My parents deserve the truth." Juan explained that she got into the car because she felt her friends from the party were bad influences. They didn't want to see her off. Debani started crying, and Juan noted that she appeared to be in distress, possibly under the influence of banned substance, as her speech was unclear. He mentioned that, when he requested her home address to take her there, but she didn't respond. He then asked her friend for Debani's mother's phone number, but they didn't have one. While driving on the highway, Debani unexpectedly asked him to stop the car and then exited. Juan tried to persuade her to return while she stood by the roadside, but she did not come back. Then, he took a photo of Debani and sent it to Debani's friends to alert them to her location. 2 of Debani's friends also gave an interview on television. The girls mentioned that at the party, Debani was aggressive and did not accept help from anyone. She asked to be left alone. Sarai learned that Debani had a disagreement with a group of people who wanted to take her home, which caused her to act oddly. Her friends suspected that something was wrong with her drink at the party, leading to her withdrawal from socializing with others. Eventually, she ran out of the club, and some guys tried to stop her. Others also came out to assist Debani, but she reacted aggressively and insisted that they leave her alone. She mentioned that her parents were lawyers and offered money to anyone who would let her be. The girls ordered a taxi, using the same driver they had trusted before. When the taxi arrived, only Debani got in, while this driver is different from the driver they want to see again. After leaving the party, the girls attempted to call Debani's father multiple times between 3:50 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., but he did not answer. It wasn't until 8:35 a.m. that they finally reached him to ask if Debani had made it home, only to discover that she was missing. One significant piece of evidence that prompted further investigation was a promotional video from the motel, which featured a song. The video not only showcased the motel, but also zoomed in on room 174. This raised suspicions that a motel worker might have been hinting at what happened in that room. As a result, the initial search lasted about 7 hours and yielded some evidence, along with previously overlooked surveillance footage. At the request of Debani's parents, room 174 was examined for blood traces, both inside the room and in the parking lot. The prosecutor's office announced that 5 individuals present at the motel that night have already been interviewed. A white truck was noted to have arrived shortly after Debani entered the hotel grounds. However, the last 8 or 9 minutes of the footage were missing, and they might contain crucial clues for solving the case. Experts are currently working to recover the potentially deleted records. On May 5, it was reported that Debani's ID stolen from her 2.5 months prior during a robbery was discovered. A resident of Building 15, where a search had already taken place, found the ID in a flower bed of the residential complex. Nonetheless, this find has not yet contributed to solving the case. Then, new information was reported in the media. Mario accused the Nuevo León prosecutor's office of hiding the results of a second autopsy on Debani's body. In there, the findings indicate that she did not suffer multiple blows to the head from blunt objects. However, medical examiners noted bruises on both sides of her head, her forehead, both eyelids, the left side of her nose, her lips, and around her ears. The report suggests that the varying severity of head injuries was likely caused by external impact, pointing to the likelihood that these injuries were inflicted by another person, this indicating a violent death rather than an accident. Furthermore, it was determined that Debani died before entering the water, as no water was found in her lungs. The report also revealed bruises and hematomas in the genital area, suggesting abuse violence. It dismissed the possibility of strangulation, since there were no injuries to her neck. This has highlighted the persistent negligence of the police. It is troubling that, in today's world, the authorities are not trustworthy. The case of Debani Susana Escobar is not only a personal tragedy, but also a powerful reminder of the violence against women in Mexico. To date, no one has been arrested or charged in connection with her death, leaving her family and the public questioning the justice system and the safety of women in society. Debani has become a symbol of the fight against gender-based violence, a problem that affects an average of 10 women every day in Mexico. Despite protests and constant pressure from the community, the investigation and prosecution process has been slow, leaving the quest for justice for these young women a significant question mark. Debani's death has not only left her family heartbroken, but has also sparked outrage and a determination for change in society. But will this voice and struggle be enough to bring justice and end similar tragedies? The answer still lies in the future. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Monica McCarrick. Tori and her twin sister Lily Ball were born in September 2007 to parents Monica McCarrick and Michael Ball, who lived in San Diego, California. Their relationship was difficult from the start, partly due to their 10-year age gap. Monica struggled with substance abuse, which often led to her run-ins with the police. In 2006, she was arrested for domestic violence and given probation, but her aggressive behavior continued, eventually leading to the couple's divorce. Following the split, Michael filed for custody of the twins in 2009. Monica's life took a new turn. She began dating Robert Paulson, her first love. They had been friends for over 10 years, and their long-distance relationship began on Thanksgiving Day 2009 when Monica discovered her ex's social media page and contacted him. They began communicating as friends. However, Robert was in a relationship with another girl named Jill. In April 2010, a tragic event occurred when Jill took her own life with Robert's gun. Robert had a passion for guns and owned a collection that included a samurai sword and an agile rifle. After this heartbreaking incident, Monica supported Robert through his grief and they became closer, eventually starting a romantic relationship. In May 2010, Monica and the children moved to Pennsylvania. Their romance progressed quickly, leading to their engagement just days later. Monica was very happy during this time. She became a devoted mother, worked as a manager at a dental office, and pursued further education. Robert was also happy, and it seemed like their lives were improving. Unfortunately, this story would not have a happy ending. In August 2010, Monica and Robert moved to California while still planning their wedding. They rented an apartment in a residential area in Fairfield. Monica was looking for a school for her daughters and had obtained her license to practice dentistry. Robert supported her and admired her dedication as a mother to ensuring a good future for her daughters. He appreciated her calm demeanor. Robert worked for a film crew, which required him to travel for filming, resulting in him being absent for long periods of time. On September 9, 2010, just a month after moving to California, Robert was called away on a long business trip to film a movie in Minnesota. This left him with no choice but to leave, which upset Monica. She was not ready to let him go, as she still had unresolved issues from the move and wanted to improve their life together. Monica nevertheless agreed to let Robert go on the business trip. At first, everything seemed fine, but about 3 weeks after he left, Robert began to notice that Monica's behavior had changed significantly. She began to act very strangely. Monica discovers a script written by Robert that depicts a horror story about a man who chases children down a beach, ultimately leading to their deaths. Monica understands that the script is about her family and fears for her children's safety. However, Robert denied all of this. Robert insisted that it was a work of fiction related to his work. Throughout Robert's business trip, Monica frequently brought up her concerns in conversation. Eventually, she began to claim that Robert's previous girlfriend had died because of him. Monica suspected that Robert was involved with another woman at the time and believed that his affair contributed to his ex-girlfriend's tragic decision. Robert spent hours on the phone and texting Monica to calm her down. Unfortunately, this only worked for a short time before she began to express new suspicions. People who came into contact with her during this time noticed her paranoid behavior. Monica wanted Robert to stay home and objected to his long business trips. Robert reassured her that his trip to Minnesota would be over soon and that she was eagerly awaiting his return. On the day before his return, Robert's manager informed him that he would need to stay in Alaska for another 5 to 10 days to finish filming, as they had found the ideal location for some of the missing scenes. When he shared this news with Monica, she became extremely upset. She tried her best to convince him to return home with her and the children, saying that she could not handle the situation on her own. Although she pleaded for help, Robert felt helpless and asked her to be patient a little longer. Monica was not completely alone, her family supported her. However, Robert noticed that her mental state seemed unstable. Her friends, who remained in contact with her during this time, often mentioned this in their conversations. On September 25, Monica contacted her friend Regina, expressing that she feared for her life. Monica truly believed that Robert and his mother might harm her. She asked Regina to contact the police if anything happened to her. That same day, Monica contacted her friend Maritza to express her concerns about Robert and his family. She stressed that she felt unsafe and feared for the safety of her children. Maritza called her to discuss the matter further. During the conversation, Monica shared that her suspicions were related to a script Robert had written that depicted a murder involving a woman and her children. Maritza reassured Monica, and for a moment things seemed to calm down, but the calm did not last long. Maritza received another alarming text message 3 days later, on September 29th. In this message, Monica claimed that someone wanted to kidnap her children and harm her. She also contacted another friend, Pamela, expressing her fear that Robert intended to harm her. Monica was genuinely afraid for her safety, but she also hoped that her fears were paranoid. She stressed that if she or her children went missing, it was important to contact the police and hold Robert accountable. Unfortunately, Pamela was unable to visit Monica this time because she was in another city visiting her mother. The conversation ended with Monica declaring her intention to go to the police to prove Robert's involvement in the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Jill. However, many of her text messages were inconsistent. She expressed stress about raising her children, feeling overwhelmed by having to deal with the problems on her own. This confused the Pamela, who knew that Robert worked hard to provide for the family. At the same time, Monica often mentioned her desire to be free, to relax, and to enjoy herself. Michael often took the Tori and Lily out, giving Monica a chance to relax. She also had many friends and family to lean on. Not everyone was able to respond immediately to Monica when a problem arose, but they were able to reach her within a few hours to offer their support. They constantly help her. Friends and acquaintances noted that in Pennsylvania, Monica was much calmer and handled everyday problems well, even when she was alone. However, when she moved to California, where all her relatives and friends lived, she became panicky about Robert's absence. From September 29th to October 4th, 2010, Monica and her children traveled to San Diego to visit their mother. During this visit, she shared a script written by Robert, which frightened her. She was also concerned about the many weapons stored in the home. She feared that Robert intended to harm them with these weapons and discussed her concerns with her mother. Monica was clearly nervous and anxious about her upcoming wedding. However, after she and her daughters went shopping for wedding dresses, her mood changed. Monica seemed happy and excited, taking many pictures of the dress she had chosen and sending them to friends and family, including one to her grandmother, Terry Faye. They had a close relationship, with her grandmother visiting regularly and supporting her. On October 11th, Monica called her grandmother Terry again and expressed her fear of losing her daughter and her concerns for her own safety. However, during this call, Terry noticed that Monica's behavior was unusual. Monica's situation is confusing. She has moved across the country in search of a better life, hoping to be closer to her family. Her goal is to marry Robert and build a life with him and their children. However, she frequently expresses fears for her safety, especially around Robert. Despite her fear of Robert, she pursues the marriage. Meanwhile, Michael is fighting for custody of their twins. Robert's mother, Roxanne, became increasingly concerned about Monica. While her son was away, she noticed that Monica was losing control. Monica handled things well at first, but as time went on, her instability became more apparent. Roxanne often takes Tori and Lily for walks, giving Monica time to rest. Occasionally, Monica and the children would visit Roxanne. An alarming incident occurred while Monica was sleeping at Roxanne's house. She suddenly woke up around 3 in the morning and began to prepare for something. Roxanne heard a noise and went outside to check what was going on. Monica pointed to a car parked on the street near her house, believing that someone was following her, which made her very nervous. Roxanne, knowing the owner of the car, tried to reassure Monica. The car belonged to a neighbor who had just returned home late from work. He had lived in the area for a long time, was a devoted family man and did not pose any threat to them. Monica's concerns did not subside, so she took her daughters and went home, insisting she did not feel safe. When she returned home, she began to feel more comfortable. The next morning, she informed Robert's mother, Roxanne, that she was feeling fine. In the afternoon, she called Roxanne at work, saying that a delivery man had come to her house and hinted that he might be part of a plot to harm her. Despite Roxanne's attempts to calm her down, Monica remained restless. She then tried to call her mother, but her mother was at work and could not talk for long. Her mother reassured Monica to calm down. Monica replied that everything was fine and then ended the call. The next morning, October 12th, the neighborhood manager came to Monica's apartment to ask her to move her car. She parked her car blocking several other parking spaces. When the manager knocked on the door, Monica was too scared to open it. After a long conversation through the door, Monica finally agreed to open the door and go outside to park her car properly. During this time, the manager noticed that Monica's two daughters, Tori and Lily, were in the apartment and they seemed okay. Monica called in to take time off work so she could get a new hairstyle for her wedding. While she was on the phone, her manager noticed a child crying in the background. Robert later spoke to Monica on the phone and via text messages. He found her messages confusing and included some inappropriate quotes. From what he could understand, it sounded like she was talking about children. One message read, "Let the bunnies go away forever." Robert understood this to be a reference to the custody battle involving Monica's ex-husband, Michael, who was seeking full custody. It was likely that the court would award custody to Michael, which would mean that Lily and Tori could be separated from Monica. With her past issues with substance abuse and mental health, she was at risk of losing her parental rights. However, Robert was busy and didn't think much of the message. That evening, Monica and Robert spoke on the phone. Monica was very difficult to understand, speaking very quickly and seeming to move around her apartment, with a lot of background noise. She hung up several times but called back immediately. She insisted that whatever had happened should be considered an accident. It was unclear what she meant, but her tone was very disturbing. Monica also mentioned that she had planned to start a fire with her children. Suddenly, the fire alarm went off, and he heard Monica scream before the call abruptly ended. Worried, Robert kept calling Monica, but no one answered. Worried, he contacted the police to check on her. It felt like a horrible nightmare, but he had no idea that the situation was much more horrifying than he could have imagined. Monica fed Tori and Lily and tied them to high chairs. She then took a samurai sword from the wall in Robert's office and began to violently attack the children. Within minutes, Monica had killed Tori and Lily and used their bodies to barricade the apartment door before setting the apartment on fire. The neighbors only heard the children's short cries and some noises, which did not arouse any suspicion. When the fire alarm rang, it was too late. The downstairs neighbor noticed smoke coming from the apartment above and called the police. After calling, he quickly ran upstairs and broke down the door, but it wouldn't open. He then tried to enter through the sliding window of the third-floor apartment. Luckily, he was able to reach the window and get in. The room was filled with thick smoke, making it difficult to see. When the neighbor entered the area where the tragic incident with the children took place, the entire floor was covered in blood, and there was a sword and a medicine bottle on the ground, which could have been the murder weapon. Unfortunately, it was too late to save Tori and Lily. When police arrived, they were unable to enter the home immediately because the children's bodies were blocking the front door. After some struggle, they were able to get inside. The entire apartment was filled with smoke, and the fire was in the pantry next to the front door. After the fire was extinguished and the smoke cleared, the rescue team discovered the children's bodies. They also found Monica, who was unconscious and had suffered multiple serious injuries that appeared to be self-inflicted. Monica was rushed to the medical center in critical condition. Her injuries included lacerations to her neck and hands, several severed fingers, and severed tendons. Both ankles were injured, and there was a deep wound to her thigh. During a search of the apartment, police found several weapons, including a loaded rifle, a shotgun, and a loaded pistol. A significant amount of live ammunition was discovered in the hallway, along with a sword and a lighter that Monica used to start a fire in the pantry. 2 high chairs, which were overturned and covered in blood, indicated that the children were eating when the murder occurred, as trays with plates and food were found scattered on the floor. A laptop displaying cartoons was in front of them. The kitchen table was also smeared with blood, suggesting that there was an attempt to clean it hurriedly. Additionally, a thrilling novel by James Patterson about a serial killer was opened to a page that read, "My daughter died." During the analysis of the vial, forensic experts found no dangerous or powerful drugs. During the autopsy, they discovered multiple injuries on Tori and Lily. Tori had 11 cuts on her face and deep wounds on the front of her neck. On her chest, there were 9 shallow cuts and 2 stab wounds. One punctured her lung and the other punctured her heart. Lily had multiple injuries, including 5 cuts on her face and neck and 9 cuts on her chest, including one so severe that it nearly severed her head. The sword had severed Lily's larynx and arteries. The children's arms were the most injured, suggesting the twins had attempted to defend themselves. None of the girls inhaled smoke from the fire, indicating that they were already dead when the fire started, as there was no soot in their lungs. The brutality of their murders shocked all the experts involved in the case. Shortly after being released from the hospital, 27-year-old Monica was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, arson, attempting to destroy evidence, and obstructing the investigation. Confined to a wheelchair and covered in bandages, she appeared in court on October 26, 2010, where she did not plead guilty. Monica argued that her crime was a result of insanity, leading to her being sent for a psychiatric evaluation from October 2010 to June 2011. A prison psychiatrist met with her more than 10 times, spending around 20 hours in discussions, conducting various psychological tests, reviewing her medical records, and speaking with her family members. The psychiatrist found that when Monica was 14, she had displayed similar self-harming behaviors. At that time, she was diagnosed with a type of attention deficit disorder and prescribed medication to manage it. However, she did not complete her treatment and later began abusing illegal drugs, which resulted in her developing bipolar disorder. The Monica stated that she started drinking alcohol at 12 and began using marijuana at 14, which ultimately led to her becoming addicted to illegal drugs by 18. From 2003 to 2005, she was diagnosed with depression while living in San Diego and received professional psychiatric treatment. After Robert went on a business trip, she relapsed and used drugs throughout September and October 2010. Monica reported experiencing paranoid thoughts, common in heavy users. She confessed to her psychiatrist that she had been heavily intoxicated in the 4 days before the crime. Monica often told her doctor that her addiction made it difficult for her to communicate with her children. As a result, she often tried to stay away from them, sometimes leaving them with strangers. She called her loved ones several times, seeking their help, and they tried to support her. However, the psychiatrist revealed that Monica's problems were not only due to illegal drugs. In the days leading up to the tragic event, she experienced delusions, paranoia, and feelings of being persecuted. She believed that Robert and his mother were planning to kidnap her daughters and torture them, a fear that was heightened by a story Robert wrote. In prison, she told a psychiatrist that she had read in a book the exact time that the attackers would arrive to try to enslave her daughter. The psychiatrist recognized this as a symptom known as reference ideas, in which the patient believes that ordinary events contain hidden messages. Monica was convinced that certain events were destined to happen. Monica believed that this was a sign that her children would be enslaved. In her desperation to save Tori and Lily, she realized that even if she saved them from Robert, she could still lose them if her ex-husband Michael won custody in court. This led her to the tragic conclusion that her daughters needed to be killed, which she did. However, despite her serious actions, her thought process showed that she was still quite sane, despite some mental health issues. She planned to barricade the door so that it could not be opened immediately and only set it on fire after killing her children, with the intention of covering up what had happened. Another psychiatrist, after speaking with Monica, concluded that she was not fully aware of her actions. He believed that Monica thought she was saving her children when she brutally killed them. On October 25, 2011, while in prison, Monica confided to a fellow inmate that she was hearing voices. By November, she began to have paranoid thoughts, fearing that she would be attacked. In April 2012, she overdosed while still incarcerated. Monica reported using illegal drugs, and prison guards observed that she drank up to 12 cups of coffee a day, which worsened her mental state. She frequently expressed concerns about threats to her life from prison gangs and often attempted to communicate with doctors and other professionals. But her reports were inconsistent, unclear, and sometimes completely false. Her psychological evaluation hearings dragged on. Michael attended the trial and asked not to show mercy to the Monica who'd taken the lives of the babies. The final decision was up to the jury. After hours of deliberation, they concluded that Monica had intentionally killed Tori and Lily. On June 15, 2012, Monica McCarrick was convicted of first-degree murder. The jury sentenced Monica to 2 consecutive life terms in state prison without the possibility of parole. During her trial, she cried. She told the court that she was praying for everyone's well-being, despite her own deteriorating condition. Monica expressed that she loved her daughters. Monica is currently serving her sentence in a California prison and has attempted to appeal her sentence multiple times. On August 22, 2019, an online petition was started, urging the governor of California to overturn Monica's sentence. The petition claims that nearly all psychiatric experts who have reviewed her case believe she was not aware of her actions when the crime occurred. However, as of now, only 144 people have signed the petition, and Monica is still incarcerated. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Kimberly Proctor. Kimberly Proctor was born on January 1, 1992, in Langford, Canada. She came from a middle-class family. Her mother, Lucia, was a manager at Walmart, and her father, Fred, was a mechanic. Kimberly was known for her kind and loving nature, especially towards animals. She had several pets at home, including lizards, rabbits, mice, but her greatest love was for cats. Unfortunately, her fondness for cats led to years of bullying at school, where she often wore small cat ears, and this harassment continued for a long time. According to her mother, Kimberly faced bullying for most of her life. Kimberly's situation became more difficult when she was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, which made her more vulnerable to teasing. She began having panic attacks at school. As a result, her parents chose to enroll Kimberly in a different school. This school catered to young people with a variety of problems, including some who had been expelled from other schools for misbehavior. One of her classmates was Cruz Elwood, a boy who faced many challenges. Cruz lived with his mother. His father had been in prison since 2001 after being sentenced to 15 years for abusing and murdering a young girl. Cruz later admitted that he knew about his father's actions but did not want to talk about it. Despite his young age, Cruz was involved in drugs and had a history of stealing money from mailboxes. People who knew him described him as very intelligent. Another troubled student at the school was Cameron Moffat, a friend of Cruz's who was diagnosed with PTSD after being abused when he was 4 years old. Cameron had a difficult relationship with his parents, and neither medication nor counseling seemed to help. He often resisted treatment and began self-harming to cope with his anxiety. His aggressive behavior was evident both at home and at school, where he sometimes carried a knife. Cruz and Cameron met in the 5th grade and quickly became best friends. They did everything together, from skipping school to smoking marijuana. They also loved playing the computer game Warcraft and occasionally visited adult websites. Although their behavior at school was unpredictable, they were not seen as a serious threat. In February 2008, Cruz wrote a blog post about warning signs of a serial killer, listing common traits like cruelty to animals, a fascination with fire, parental abandonment, and a strong interest in violence. He pointed out that he fulfilled all 14 of the criteria he mentioned. By 2009, Kimberly had joined Cruz and Cameron's group, and they began to do everything together. When they weren't hanging out outside, they spent hours texting and chatting. During this time, Kimberly started dating Zach, who was friends with Cruz and Cameron. However, their relationship only lasted a couple of months before Zach decided to break up with her. This breakup upset Kimberly deeply, and she turned to her friends for support, spending long hours chatting online. During one of these conversations, Cameron revealed to Kimberly that he had feelings for her and thought she was beautiful. Kimberly appreciated the compliment but was only interested in Cruz, with whom she had grown closer after her breakup with Zach. Kimberly and Cruz began sharing their most private thoughts online, including secrets they had never revealed to anyone else. Kimberly opened up to Cruz about her honest feelings about her weight and height, and Cruz reassured her that she was beautiful just the way she was. However, Cruz and Cameron's lives began to take a dark and sinister turn. They began drinking blood and bodily fluids to see how they would feel. Cameron's friends said that he would sometimes lash out at his family and yell at his mother, while Cruz became increasingly aggressive toward his mother and defied any restrictions placed on him. Both boys began to have disturbing fantasies about being restrained and abused, leading them to explore adult websites with violent themes. Their discussions with Kimberly became increasingly disturbing. One day, Cameron made an innuendo-filled remark to Kimberly that upset her. When she shared this with Cruz, he responded by making the same suggestion. When Kimberly refused, Cruz threatened her ominously, saying, "Death is coming for you, and you will soon be dead." He then asked her about her plans for the next day. Cruz expressed interest in meeting her to discuss why some people were treating her so badly and other personal issues. They eventually agreed to call and meet the next day. She had no idea that Cruz had already contacted Cameron and they were exchanging messages about Kimberly. In Cameron and Cruz's conversation before the terrible events, they mentioned that they should proceed with their plan, saying that they have to be careful and that it will be interesting. They expressed their desire to do it immediately instead of waiting, saying that they will not harm her right away and can keep her alive but tied up. Later, Cameron and Cruz decide on a specific phrase to signal when to act to harm Kimberly. Cruz also suggests that they meet at the Ford bus stop at 10 o'clock. 18-year-old Kimberly accidentally found herself in a dangerous situation. That morning, Kimberly was still in bed while her mother, Lucia, prepared to leave for work. Before leaving, Lucia kissed Kimberly and expressed her love for her. Since Kimberly had no classes that day, her mother thought she would sleep in, especially since her only commitment was babysitting at 3 p.m. They had planned to start sewing Kimberly's prom dress together when Lucia returned home. However, Lucia was unaware that Kimberly had other plans. She had arranged to meet Cameron and Cruz at the bus station around 10:30 a.m. Kimberly got off the bus at the stop where her friends were waiting. Just minutes earlier, Cameron and Cruz had bought a can of gasoline as part of their terrifying plan. The three friends chatted for a while before heading to Cruz's house in Bali. Up until this point, everything seemed normal to Kimberly, and she had no idea of the terrifying situation her friends had planned for her. When they arrived at the house, Cruz used a code word to signal Cameron, and almost immediately, both attacked Kimberly, beating and kicking her. They bound her feet and ankles, stuffed a sock in her mouth, and taped it shut. Cameron and Cruz violently assaulted Kimberly for hours, ultimately causing her death by suffocation. Afterward, They desecrated her body in horrific ways, mutilating her and placing various items in her genital area before storing her in a freezer in Cruz's garage. Cruz attempted to cover his tracks and establish an alibi by sending her a message from his computer. In this message, he pretended to be far away and asked her if she had completed her work as a nanny, claiming he needed her advice. Cameron and Cruz's actions were extremely disturbing, and they treated it as a game. That same night, after committing the horrific act, Cruz texted his girlfriend, asking her to come out of the house to meet him. Fortunately, she refused, which may have saved her life. The next morning, Cameron and Cruz placed Kimberly's body in a hockey bag and calmly took a bus to a remote forested area. There, they doused the bag with gasoline and set it on fire. During this time, Cruz made the mistake of using his cell phone to send a message. Meanwhile, Kimberly's parents and relatives were in a state of panic, unaware of her whereabouts. Her mother, Lucia, had tried to call Kimberly the day before, but when her calls went directly to voicemail, she sensed something was wrong. Lucia went to the police station to report Kimberly missing, and the search for Kimberly quickly began. After causing Kimberly's death, both Cruz and Cameron continued their lives as if nothing had happened. Cruz spent the day at home with his girlfriend, while Cameron had lunch with his mother and grandmother, then they took him to buy a new video game. That night, a young man who was hanging out with friends discovered charred body under a bridge. The body was burned beyond recognition. The body was later identified through dental records and was that of Kimberly. The tragic news devastated Kimberly's family and friends. Police arrived to investigate the crime scene. At the time, police had no leads to identify anyone responsible for this horrific crime. Kimberly's family and friends reported that she had no known conflicts with anyone and were puzzled as to who could have harmed her. In her memory, the family created a Facebook page, which police are closely monitoring in the hopes of uncovering any clues. They are also keeping a close eye on all of Kimberly's acquaintances. The story of the horrific incident shocked Canada, and every media outlet covered it. At the time, Cruz was eager to share his dark exploit with someone he trusted. He decided to use the in-game chat feature, believing that chat records were unlikely to be kept or checked. On March 23, 5 days after the murder, Cruz messaged a young girl from Halifax, urging her to read something important. He then sent her links to news articles about the incident to prove that he was telling the truth. The girl was horrified by what Cruz revealed but reacted the way he wanted, assuring him that she would always support him, no matter what his actions were. Cruz replied that that's why he trusted her, and he would repay her trust, no matter what. Suddenly, Cameron joined the conversation and backed up Cruz's account. The girl asked Cameron if he had any thoughts about Kimberly's family and friends and the lives he had impacted. Cameron simply replied that he felt no remorse for any of that. The young girl wrote to Cruz again, asking him not to repeat his previous actions. He promised he wouldn't. As time went on, the Cameron and Cruz their lives as if nothing had happened, but they kept a close eye on the investigation's progress. Their online chats and text messages mostly revolved around updates related to the case. Cruz confided to a friend that his father had advised him not to answer questions at school. This advice may have stemmed from his father's suspicion that Cruz was involved in Kimberly's death or knew who was responsible. An incident later occurred involving Samantha, one of Kimberly's close friends, who overheard Cruz making negative comments about Kimberly. Samantha asked him to stop, explaining that it still hurt her to hear such things so soon after Kimberly's death. In response, Cruz yelled that he did not care about Kimberly's death. Another student even reported hearing Cruz say that he was glad Kimberly was dead because he did not like her. At that point, police began investigating Cameron and Cruz, leading to their questioning. Both admitted to seeing Kimberly on the morning she went missing, but said they didn't spend much time with her because she had to go to school. Police began monitoring Cameron and Cruz's online activities. Police obtained a warrant to install wiretaps in their home, and both were placed under close surveillance. Their cell phones were also tapped and investigations into their devices were conducted. Disturbing evidence was discovered, including text messages exchanged between them in online chats. Police seized numerous documents related to their activities. Police believe Cruz and Cameron were responsible for Kimberly's death. Cameron and Cruz were then arrested and charged with Kimberly's murder. Both appeared calm and unresponsive. Cruz remained silent throughout the interrogation. Cameron, on the other hand, repeatedly taunted the police and refused to provide any information. He eventually confessed to his crimes in a cold manner. After Cameron's confession, Cruz was forced to admit everything. They both later pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and destruction of human remains. A year after the events of 2011, Cameron and Cruz appeared at their trial, appearing calm and talking animatedly to each other about the questions they were being questioned about. Throughout the hearing, they remained calm and unflinching. A psychological evaluation found that Cruz displayed characteristics of a rapist that were rare for his age and was at high risk of committing violent acts again. He was also diagnosed with clinical psychopathy. The psychiatrist indicated that Cruz would require intensive and prolonged supervision for at least the next 10 years. Cameron had a high rate of reoffending and serious mental health issues. During the hearing, the judge needed to decide whether to try both young men as adults and transfer them to an adult prison or to treat them as juveniles. It's important to note that the defense requested they be tried as adults, believing this would provide the boys with better educational and rehabilitation opportunities. Only Kimberly's parents were focused on seeking the death penalty for the Cameron and Cruz. However, Canada does not have a death penalty. If the young men are tried as adults, they would face life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after serving 25 years. If Cruz and Cameron had been tried as juveniles, the maximum sentence they would have faced would have been 6 years, along with 4 years of community service. Cameron Moffat and Cruz Wellwood were then sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of appealing for bail after only 10 years. Kimberly's family has expressed their anger at the lenient sentence. Kimberly's father, Fred, expressed concern that Cameron and Cruz might continue their harmful behavior and that this was unacceptable. Fred pointed out that both had confessed to their actions but showed no remorse, which he believed justified their lifelong detention. Meanwhile, Pacific High School, which Kimberly and the two killers attended, has established a protocol for dealing with threats of violence. The protocol would allow police, schools, and social services to exchange information about students who might pose a threat in order to prevent tragic consequences. When asked why they had treated Kimberly's body that way, Cruz mentioned that for him, it was about finding the satisfaction he craved. And he felt a sense of power in taking someone's life. He shared that his life until then had felt empty and pointless, and this act gave him a sense of fulfillment. Cruz's first petition for parole was set for June 2019 but was postponed to August. The psychological evaluation conducted at that time was nearly identical to the initial assessment, indicating that Cruz was still completely unfit for parole. Consequently, the specialist did not recommend granting him release in 2020. His appeal was denied once more, meaning Cruz will have to wait until 2025 for another chance at parole. Sometimes people get a second chance, but this case should not have been given a second chance. It was clear that there was a deliberate intention to commit a terrible act. Individuals like Cameron and Cruz acted out their darkest fantasies without remorse. In fact, it was revealed that Kimberly was just one of 3 victims they targeted. Given the nature of their actions and the psychiatric evaluations, it is clear that Cameron and Cruz should not be allowed to live freely in society. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Heike. Lauren Heike was born on November 20, 1993, in Seattle, Washington, USA, into a wealthy family. Her father owned a plumbing company, and her mother worked in real estate. She was close with her brother, Ryan. She graduated from Silver Daily High School in Washington and then moved to Phoenix, Arizona, to study cosmetology and skin care. She began working at 18 and built a successful career. Her first job was as a customer service representative. In 2015, she became a leading manager at the well-known company Benefit, where she worked for 5 years. Afterward, she worked as a cosmetologist in a beauty salon for 9 months. In October 2020, she took a manager position at a center for aesthetic medicine. She planned to follow her mother's path in real estate and wanted to explore that field. At the time of the tragedy, she was working as a full-time instructor at a golf club. Lauren was never afraid of challenges and never got discouraged. She easily connected with new colleagues and was very responsible. She is actively involved in the fields of beauty, sports, and real estate. Everyone who knew her described her as bright, kind, and humorous. Lauren is in good health, plays sports regularly and leads an active, healthy lifestyle. She has many good friends and spends most of her free time going out with them. She also loved to travel. Every day, after waking up, she has the habit of going for a walk. She found joy in even the simplest things, like a morning walk or a cup of coffee at breakfast. Tragically, Lauren's life ended at just 29 years old. Her loved ones are deeply saddened by her passing. On April 28, 2023, she started her day as usual. After waking up, she had coffee, spoke with family and friends on the phone, and prepared for a walk. Her route was that she passed through North Phoenix, near her apartment. As always, she intended to enjoy the fresh air and recharge for the day. This walk in the park is her favorite, as it gives her a path to reflect in quiet space. However, on that day, she didn't return home from her walk. Later, Lauren's colleagues and friends grew concerned when she didn't show up at work. This behavior is unlike her, as she usually lets others know if she is unwell and unable to go to work. She didn't call anyone, and she also didn't answer calls or messages from people. Her family also sensed something was wrong when she didn't contact them after the walk. This is unusual and worrying. Unable to reach her, relatives called the police and reported she missing. The police took the statement and went to Lauren's house to investigate. When the officers arrived at her house, she wasn't there. They looked through the windows but saw no one inside. Since she lived alone, there was no one to provide information about her daily routine. After checking the house, the officers found no signs of a break-in or anything suspicious. It seemed as if she had just left and never returned, possibly encountering trouble elsewhere. Lauren could not be reached, so police stepped up their search. They contacted all of her acquaintances, but no one had seen her that day. The search for Lauren began, and it wasn't long before she was found. The next day, April 29th, around 11 a.m., her body was discovered on her favorite walking path, the same one she had visited on the day she went missing. A resident of a nearby apartment complex, who was also her neighbor, out walking their dog, found her body. The dog led its owner to the location. The area was difficult to see clearly. Because of this, no passers-by discovered her body on the day of her death. Lauren, who often walked along this route with a neighbor, became a victim. The neighbor was shocked to find her and immediately called the police to report it. She described the body as having wounds that looked like knife stabs. The police quickly arrived, secured the scene, and forensic experts began searching for evidence. Authorities informed Lauren's family that her body might have been found and asked them to come for identification. Lauren's family identified her immediately. However, the official identification results were announced on May 1st. Her body was sent for an autopsy, and the forensic expert determined she was stabbed to death around 11 a.m. on April 28, 2023, the day she disappeared. The autopsy showed she had about 15 stab wounds, all on the upper body, with a deep stab in the back being fatal. The knife went in approximately 8 centimeters. Based on the wounds, the expert suggested that a penknife was used in the murder. Lauren fiercely fought for her life, which was evident from the multiple stab wounds on her hands, typical of defensive actions. There were also minor cuts and abrasions all over her body, showing her death was painful and prolonged. She attempted to defend herself and resist, but the attacker was more powerful. Furthermore, the surprise element of the attack may have played an important role, since she was suddenly attacked by a couple. While forensic experts were conducting the autopsy, the police continued to thoroughly investigate the murder scene. They discovered the reason for the numerous abrasions on Lauren's body. Along the path she had been walking, there was a barbed wire fence. It seems she attempted to crawl through it to escape, but couldn't succeed, resulting in her torn clothes and multiple abrasions and bruises. Additionally, at the crime scene, items were found that she had taken with her on her walk. Because the area where Lauren's body was found is near residential areas, so there was a high likelihood that both she and culprit were captured on surveillance cameras. The police obtained the necessary footage and thoroughly reviewed the incident of that morning. They discovered a video segment showing Lauren walking along a path around 10:52 a.m. She is calmly passing the area covered by the camera. About 22 seconds later, a tall, thin man dressed in a light t-shirt and dark shorts, carrying a backpack, is seen running behind her. However, he quickly vanished into the wooded area. A few minutes later, the same man from the recording exited the park and ran in the opposite direction. It was clear he was trying to cross the barbed wire fence, but quickly disappeared from the camera's view. No one else was present at the time, making him the main suspect in the case. Police reviewed security camera footage and identified the suspect, but ran into a major problem. The video quality was so poor, so it was impossible to identify the person's face or any features. The only clue was that he appeared to be a young black man. These recordings were shown on local television in hopes that someone could identify he. Several people have contacted the police with information. Although the information verification process took quite a while, no important clues were found. The police needed to analyze all Lauren's belongings found at the crime scene. Near the barbed wire fence, detectives discovered shoes. DNA analysis of her shoes revealed DNA that did not belong to her, likely belonging to the attacker. It was assumed that the attacker grabbed she by the leg, leaving his DNA behind. The sample was sent to the lab for further examination. After analyzing the results, the police uploaded the DNA test findings to their database. They found a match. The DNA belonged to 22-year-old Zion William Teasley, who had a previous criminal record. He had never held a steady job. A detailed review of his criminal history showed a series of convictions starting in 2020. However, the current charges were the most serious among his offenses. He had been involved in several assaults, burglaries, armed robberies, and minor acts of vandalism. In 2021, the police obtained his confession for the crimes he committed. In exchange, many of his intoxication charges, totaling about 10, were dismissed. He served 16 months in prison and was released in November 2022. The prosecutor's office encouraged him to cooperate with the investigation. Even though his DNA was on Lauren's shoes, that doesn't mean he's the killer. His DNA might have accidentally ended up on Lauren's shoes. This was not enough to arrest and charge he. More convincing evidence was needed. Therefore, detectives decided to examine his mobile phone. Officers tracked the location of Zion's mobile phone. The phone records showed it was in the area where Lauren was killed, at about the same time in the morning. Moreover, the route taken by Zion's phone matched exactly with the movements of the person seen on video. Doubts about Zion grew, but this evidence was not enough to convict him. So, the officers canvassed the area, questioning residents of nearby houses. They hoped to find people who knew the suspect and were able to identify him in the camera footage. Several local residents confirmed that the man in the video resembled Zion. Detectives consulted Zion's acquaintances, and they provided useful information. They revealed that he owned a penknife with a blade exactly 8 centimeters long, closely matching the weapon used in the murder. During the investigation, Zion remained placed on probation for a previous assault conviction. Just 5 days after Lauren's murder, he reported to the police department as required. Officers decided to speak with his probation officer. The officer mentioned that Zion appeared nervous during their last meet, as if he was anxious about something. When shown CCTV footage of the suspect, the probation officer said that the person resembled Zion in both physique and appearance and wore similar headphones. However, the officer couldn't be completely certain that the person on camera was the same as the one Zion. Soon after, the police decided to question Zion, the prime suspect. This meeting occurred on May 4th, at his residence in Teasley, located on North Scottsdale Route, just a 5-minute walk from where Lauren was murdered. The police met Zion and asked him to come in for questioning. He agreed and accompanied them to the station, and he was shown CCTV footage of Lauren and suspect. During the interrogation, he became nervous, frequently changed his story. Initially, he claimed he had never seen Lauren. But he later insisted that he was not the person in the CCTV footage and denied any involvement in the murder. Police discovered contradiction in Zion's statement during the first interrogation. He confessed to the attack, but maintained that at the time, he was not aware of his actions. He explained that he had a difficult childhood, growing up in a poor family, where he was bullied. To survive, he resorted to stealing and eventually committed other crimes. The motives for the attack on Lauren, as well as some details, remain unknown and are being kept secret. After the attack, while the investigation was still ongoing, he went on the run and tried to hide his identity. He noticed that the news frequently covered the murder and showed surveillance footage. So, he decided to flee the city. However, he was arrested before he could escape. After Zion's arrest, police found a plane ticket to Detroit in his house, which supported his plan to escape. 6 days after the attack, the police capturing him. If he had fled to another state, it would have been much more challenging to catch and convict him. During their investigation, police uncovered issues with Zion's employment. They contacted the clothing store where he worked, but the manager revealed that he had been fired just days before the murder. The employer noted his aggressive behavior at work and suspected him of involvement in thefts from the store. This suspicion was confirmed by surveillance footage, showing he caught on camera with stolen items from the store. Consequently, he was terminated, although the store did not report him to the police. Zion was charged with first-degree murder on May 4, 2023. The prosecutor identified signs of premeditation in Lauren's murder and noted intentions of fleeing to another state. As a result, bail was set at $1 million, an amount he could not afford, leading to his continued imprisonment. Besides the murder charge, Zion faces accusations of violating terms related to placed on probation. Lauren's family expressed gratitude to Phoenix police for quickly apprehending an individual who posed a major threat to society, preventing further harm. They believe such dangerous individuals should be isolated permanently and have asked for life imprisonment. What do the injuries inflicted on Laura suggest? They show that there was no connection between her and Zion. They weren't acquainted, had no communication, and shared no mutual friends. Thus, Laura was in no way the one who made him aggressive, she just accidentally became the target of this evil person. If Zion is found guilty, he could face the death penalty. Arizona enforces the death sentence and is the only U.S. state that still uses gas chamber suffocation as a method of execution. Although this method is legally available in California, Missouri, and Wyoming, their gas chambers have been dismantled. Gas suffocation is considered inhumane because it causes a slow, terrifying, and painful death. The last person executed this way in Arizona was Walter Lagrand in 1999, who was convicted for murdering a bank manager. He suffered convulsions for 18 minutes in the gas chamber. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Linda Cooney. On June 28, 2011, at approximately 8:30 a.m., Linda Cooney called the Las Vegas police. She was in a panic, reporting that her son Kevin had been shot in the neck and needed immediate help. When police and an ambulance arrived at their home, they found Kevin Cooney, 30, lying on the living room floor, bleeding. They quickly provided him with medical assistance. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they found several unusual details. Ammunition and weapons were scattered across the floor, which was not typical. They determined that the Kevin had been shot with Linda's pistol, but she could not identify who fired the weapon. There were no signs of forced entry into the house, and nothing appeared to be stolen, so they ruled out robbery as a motive. Linda was 63 years old at the time. She remained calm during the police interrogation. The interrogation lasted about an hour and was recorded. Linda insisted that she did not know who shot her son and denied any involvement, despite pressure from the police. When the police arrived, Kevin only had time to say that the shooting was an accident before he lost consciousness. He was rushed to the nearest medical center. Fortunately, Kevin survived, but his condition was serious and he would need a long time to recover. Linda's interrogation is ongoing. Police believe Kevin may have wanted to end his life. When Linda was questioned about this, she stated that he had tried to do so before. This situation required further investigation, and it was later revealed that there were more disturbing details involved in the case. During the investigation, it was discovered that a similar tragic shooting had occurred in the family 19 years earlier. Linda reported that Kevin had gone through a troubled adolescence, which had worsened after the death of his father. She informed the police that Kevin had repeatedly threatened to end his life. Even as an adult, Kevin continued to exhibit unstable behavior. Linda recounted an incident just hours before the shooting, at approximately 1 a.m. on June 28, 2011, when Kevin attacked her after an argument. He suddenly turned a corner and struck her in the chest, knocking her to the floor. She showed the police a large bruise as evidence of the attack, saying that Kevin had expressed a desire to kill her. After the fight, Linda went to bed. At the time, only Linda and Kevin were home, as her youngest son was away on a business trip. The conflict with Kevin began because of his relationship with a girl named Karina Taylor. Linda described Kevin as emotionally unstable and Karina as unpredictable, which led to frequent arguments. She said that these conflicts were common and that she was used to them. The next morning, Linda woke up and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. In the living room, she found Kevin lying on the floor with a gunshot wound. He was still alive. However, strangely, Linda said that she did not hear the gunshot. Experienced police sensed deception from the start. It appeared that Linda was trying to conceal what happened that night. She was careful with her words, while the Kevin was unconscious and there were no other witnesses for the police. So they decided to test the only piece of evidence, a .357 Magnum pistol used in the shooting. They knew the gun belonged to Linda. What is even more astonishing is that 10 years ago, Kevin's father, Jim, was shot with this gun in Palm Beach, Florida. Police investigated the case and learned that Linda had been acquitted of murdering her husband, after which Linda tried to reclaim the gun, claiming that she needed it for self-defense. She eventually succeeded in getting it back. The police try to find some similarities between Jim's and Kevin's cases that might support the idea that Linda tried to kill her son. They may even consider re-examining the first crime. Meanwhile, the police talk to family members. Jim's brother, Bob, believes that Linda intentionally shot both cases. He never trusted Linda, but there was nothing he could do to protect his family from harm. Bob was the eldest child in a wealthy and large family. As Jim grew up, he became a successful lawyer and made a good living. The family originally came from Palm Beach, while Linda was from the Midwest, where her parents owned a small family farm in Wisconsin. Jim and Linda met at a party, and after a brief encounter, he fell in love with her beautiful brunette. However, Bob is skeptical about Linda. He finds it strange that she works as a secretary at a law firm and is involved in questionable activities. That Jim was deeply in love with her, so he ignored his family's objections and married Linda in 1979. Together, they went on to have 2 sons. Linda had 2 children, Kevin, born in 1981, and Christopher, born later. However, their marriage was not a happy one. Linda accused her husband, Jim, of being abusive. Over time, their relationship deteriorated, leading Linda to report Jim to the police for assault. However, she was unable to produce any evidence or testimony to support her claims. There were no obvious signs of abuse, and many people found it hard to believe that someone as respected and decent as Jim could harm his wife. After facing accusations that damaged his reputation, Jim decided to file for divorce. After the divorce, the children continued to live with Linda in Jim's large house, while Jim had to pay child support. However, Linda was still unhappy and tried to get more money out of Jim. Meanwhile, Jim wanted to spend more time with the children, but if he did not pay her in advance, the children would not be home when he visited. According to Bob, each visit cost Jim $500, a large sum at the time. Jim became increasingly frustrated when he realized that Linda was taking advantage of the situation and blackmailing him. Jim, an attorney, chose to follow the law. On February 7, 1992, he visited his children, not with cash as he had done before, but by court order. The court ruled that Linda had to allow the children to communicate with their father. Unfortunately, during this visit, Linda shot him, resulting in his tragic death. Family members believe that she was angry that he refused to provide financial support because she had previously relied on her ex-husband while not working. In a fit of rage, she shot Jim and then called the police to report the incident. When the police arrived, they found Jim lying on his back in a pool of blood. He was holding a kitchen knife in his right hand, and he had died from multiple gunshot wounds. Linda shot her ex-husband at close range but claimed it was self-defense. She stated that Jim attacked her with a knife, leaving her no option but to shoot him. However, police were doubtful because Linda had no injuries at all. There wasn't a single scratch on her body. This led to questions about whether Jim had actually attacked her and what his motive might have been. In the end, Linda's account was not believed, and she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The key witness in the case was her son, Kevin Cooney, who witnessed the murder of his father. He was called in to testify. On that tragic day, younger brother, 8-year-old Christopher, was hiding in a closet and couldn't see the events unfold. Kevin, however, was in the bedroom with the door open to the kitchen, where his parents were arguing. He watched through. He looked through the crack in the door. Kevin remembered feeling terrified and anxious. He was frozen in place, unable to move, when he saw what had happened. Kevin reported that before the shooting started, he saw his father holding a shiny object, but he couldn't identify it clearly. He thought it looked like a knife, but it might have also been a key or something similar. After the shooting, when he left the room, he noticed his father no longer had anything in his hand. It was only after the shooting ended that a knife appeared in his father's hand. When the police arrived, they suspected Linda had staged a self-defense scenario by placing the knife in Jim's hand. Linda had a strong motive for this action because her husband's sons would inherit his money upon his death. Her children would benefit from Jim Cooney's life insurance policy, worth $1 million, which, along with his considerable estate, would be passed on to his children. However, the most compelling evidence the police uncovered was not Linda's call to the police, but her phone records. They discovered that before calling 911, she had contacted her lawyer first, possibly to seek legal advice. During the 9-to-1 conversation, Linda made several verbal errors, possibly due to confusion. She asked for backup and claimed that her ex-husband was trying to stab her, despite having previously said that she had shot him and that he appeared to be dead. The police were certain that Jim was dead before she called her lawyer, and she only contacted the police afterwards. It is also feared that, before her arrest, Linda had convinced Kevin that the knife had been in his father's possession the entire time. During the trial, Kevin testified that he saw an object in his father's hands. In 1993, 11-year-old Kevin took the stand as a witness. He spoke with a stutter due to fear and held a small toy. Although his testimony was somewhat confusing, it was convincing enough for the jury to quickly acquit Linda Cooney, leading to her release from the courtroom. Clearly, Kevin's testimony played a crucial role in her defense. Afterwards, she gave an interview to numerous media outlets, describing her ex-husband as a typical abuser. She maintained that she was not a murderer but acted in self-defense. To protect herself and her children, some people supported her. However, most Palm Beach residents who knew Linda's family did not believe her explanation. Because of Jim's calm and non-confrontational nature, the locals looked down on her and assumed she was the murderer. As a result, Linda could not stay there long due to the public backlash and the potential for conflict. After receiving financial support, she packed her children and moved to Las Vegas. She wanted to start a new life somewhere where no one would recognize her. 2 decades later, the heartbreaking incident occurred again. It involved the same .357 Magnum pistol that was used to shoot the family's father, Jim. Kevin Cooney is now recovering in the hospital. Initially, he was unconscious and partially paralyzed. He was unable to provide a clear account of the events of that tragic night. When Kevin woke up in the hospital 3 days later, his first words were, "No, Mom, I'm afraid of Mom." Mom shot on. He immediately told several nurses about this and seemed genuinely scared. It was clear he feared that his mother would come back to harm him again. His statements were serious, indicating that he was not joking. Kevin's girlfriend, Karina Taylor, was not surprised by his words. She said she lived in fear of his mother during their 2-year relationship. Their relationship began in 2009. Karina stated that Kevin had a constant fear of his mother, who reacted harshly whenever he had a girlfriend. Linda had previously frightened off all of Kevin's girlfriends, but Karina was determined and not intimidated by Kevin's mother's angry expressions. From their initial interactions, Karina developed a negative view of Linda, finding her to be erratic and aggressive. Linda bluntly tells Karina that Karina's family will never accept her and advises her to stay away from Kevin. And Linda ominously implies that she always carries a gun for self-defense. This makes Karina realize that it is best not to confront Linda, causing her to secretly meet Kevin out of fear for her safety. Kevin's previous girlfriends share similar concerns. 1. Clarita Candle believes Kevin's mother is a serious threat, as Linda has threatened her life. Kevin often finds himself caught in the middle, desperately trying to protect his relationships, which are constantly sabotaged by his mother's behavior. Kevin really wants a future with family and children. But at the age of 30, his mother disapproves of his wishes. One day, his ex-girlfriend Clarita receives an unexpected call from Linda, who has found out her phone number. Linda rudely begins to interrogate Clarita about her life, using vulgar language and accusing her of only being after Kevin's money. This confrontation escalates into a series of unpleasant encounters, where Linda openly insults and threatens Clarita. Although Kevin and Clarita's relationship is short-lived, Clarita constantly feels uncomfortable and believes that Linda is stalking her. Eventually, the stress becomes too much, and she decides to break up with Kevin to find peace. Linda's plan to keep Kevin away from the girls worked for a long time, but it didn't work with Karina Taylor. Kevin and Karina's relationship grew stronger, and he wanted to build a life with her. He decided to leave his mother and move in with Karina, sharing their plans on social media. When Linda found out, she started spreading rumors and even contacted Karina at her work. Kevin wanted to make things right with Linda, and Karina believed he tried to do so the night he was shot. Kevin could not stand his mother's control, so he announced that he was leaving. However, she refused to let him go and used a weapon. She went down from the second floor and shot him in the neck. Police determined that Linda used a .357 caliber gun, the same gun used in Jim's murder. Police discovered that, once again, Linda did not immediately call the police. She waited about 15 minutes before seeking help while Kevin was on the verge of death. Phone records show that she first called her second son, Christopher, who was not nearby. The investigation concluded that Linda was guilty of attempting to murder her son. She was arrested and charged with the crime. On April 8, 2014, Linda went on trial. It had been more than 20 years since she first killed her husband. This time, the trial was held in Las Vegas, where she was charged with attempting to murder Kevin. During the trial, his younger brother Christopher, influenced by his mother, believed that his brother was responsible for the situation. He described Kevin as a very cruel person, often violent at home and often arguing with his mother. During the call, Linda informed Christopher that Kevin had attacked her by hitting her and threatening to kill her. In response, she retrieved a loaded pistol that she kept in the living room for self-defense. She intended to use it to protect herself and stop Kevin, but he took the gun from her. While he was armed, Kevin accidentally shot himself. The defense attempted to present this as an accident, but this was inconsistent with Linda's initial statement, in which she claimed that she did not see who fired the shot, and Kevin also claimed that his mother shot him. During the trial, the prosecution presented testimony from 2 girls, one former girlfriend and one current girlfriend of Kevin, as well as 4 nurses who had contact with him during his hospital stay. All of them confirmed that Linda shot him. In addition to their statements, there was considerable physical evidence, including fingerprints found on the weapon. For months after the shooting that left Kevin paralyzed, he was able to testify in court, but he altered his original story. He now claimed that there had been an argument between them that night, insisting that he attacked Linda first. The Kevin did not hold Linda responsible for the incident, referring to it as self-defense or an accident. He had expressed similar sentiments when speaking to the police at the hospital. It seemed he was worried about not surviving, so he wanted to ensure his mother wouldn't go to prison after he passed away. Kevin loved his mother deeply and continued to protect her, but this did not alter the reality that there had been reports of arguments and domestic violence coming from their home for several years. Kevin's message, originally seen as a warning to his girlfriend about Linda. It was clear that Linda had total control over her children's relationships. She chose not only who they could date but also who their friends would be. She managed Kevin's mobile phone, preventing him from talking to girls, and did the same with Christopher. The Kevin's and Christopher personal lives were completely controlled. They didn't even have doors on their rooms. Even though they were grown men, they still had to rely on their mother's permission for everything. Since childhood, Linda has said that they owe her their lives for the violent events of 20 years ago. They truly believed that their father intended to harm them, which made them completely submissive to Linda's authority. The trial was ongoing, and its outcome was uncertain. The prosecution argued that Kevin was trying to escape his mother's oppressive control. When Linda realized she was losing control, she grabbed a gun and attempted to kill Kevin. They presented strong evidence, including a video of Kevin in a hospital bed, where he claimed his mother shot him. However, Kevin refuted this claim, stating it stemmed from anger. While in court, Kevin appeared to take full responsibility for the incident. He admitted to threatening his mother, breaking down in tears and begging Linda for forgiveness. The prosecutor accused Linda of being completely controlling and manipulating her sons, but Kevin insisted that he was in charge and made his own decisions. He also admitted to using violence if his mother did not comply. However, this is hard to believe given the testimony of his former girlfriends, who reported that Linda did not allow her sons to pursue personal relationships and maintain tight control over their lives. Medical center staff supported the prosecution's account. They stated that Kevin was extremely agitated and appeared genuinely afraid that his mother was coming to kill him. All 4 nurses who examined him there reported that Kevin admitted that his mother had threatened and tried to kill him. Kevin was then called to testify again. The same events from Linda's first trial 20 years ago were repeated, raising suspicions that Kevin might be able to keep his mother out of jail again. However, this time, Kevin testified that the gun was pointed down when the shot was fired, contradicting his previous testimony to the prosecution. He later testified that the barrel was pointed up when he tried to take the gun away. Everyone noticed these inconsistencies in his testimony. Despite everything, Kevin still hoped that his mother would not go to jail. The prosecutor's office claimed that Kevin was biased because of his feelings for his mother, which they said affected his testimony. The jury returned a verdict in less than an hour. This time, the jury found Linda Cooney, 65, guilty of attempted murder. She was also convicted of assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, and stalking her son. At the final hearing where the verdict was announced, Bob, the brother of Jim, the first victim, spoke up. He stated that Linda had repeatedly harassed and threatened his family, ultimately taking away a loved one from them. He warned that if Linda was released from prison, those close to her would be in danger again. Kevin did not attend the sentencing but submitted a note stating that he took responsibility for these tragic events. In her defense, Linda stated that she had worked hard for years to provide for her children and meet their basic needs. However, she also believed that Kevin had inherited mental health issues from Jim, which contributed to his aggression that night. The court sentenced Linda Cooney to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 13 years. Jim's family was unhappy with the sentence, believing it was unfair. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jennifer Levin. On August 26, 1986, around 6:15 a.m., a woman was cycling through Central Park when she spotted something in the grass that looked like a human body. As she got closer, she realized it was a girl's body and, in a panic, she ran to the nearest public phone to call 911. After a few minutes, the police were on the scene, but it was too late to save the girl. The sight of her lifeless body shocked everyone present. The girl's neck showed signs of strangulation, and her face was badly scratched. The police suspected a sexual motive behind the crime. The victim's identity was quickly established because she had an ID on her. She was Jennifer Levin, just 18 years old. Investigations into Jennifer's background revealed that she was both enterprising and humorous. Her parents had divorced when she was 5, and before starting school, she moved to Soho to live with her father, a renowned real estate agent. Although Jennifer was supposed to attend the high school in Manhattan, her father chose to send her to a prestigious private school instead. Jennifer is an excellent and intelligent student, well regarded by her classmates and teachers. Over time, she began to participate in vibrant activities at school and made friends with children whose parents were as wealthy as hers. She easily passed the advanced placement programs designed to prepare students for prestigious universities like Yale and Harvard. Gradually, she has made new friends at private schools in New York and was invited to parties, expanding her social circle. Although Jennifer's friends live scattered throughout the city, they all gathered in one atmospheric spot for parties. It was here that Jennifer met her first love, a guy named Dorian. However, their relationship ended quickly, so she soon began seeing another young man named Robert Chambers. He claimed to be the son of wealthy parents with their own country club. It wasn't until a year after their first meeting that they started dating. On August 25, 1986, Jennifer started university. However, her excitement was short-lived. By the morning of August 26, she was discovered lifeless in Central Park. What really happened to Jennifer there? Was she a random victim or did someone deliberately target her? As investigators considered the possibility that the incident was sexually motivated, they speculated that Jennifer may have been involved in prostitution. This could explain why she was in such a risky location at night. However, she comes from a rich family and she doesn't need the money, so she wouldn't do that. Also, her relatives denied this. During this time, crime in New York has increased. Among the thousands of murders that take place each year, Jennifer's case stands out and attracts great public attention. The police faced immense pressure because she belonged to a well-respected, wealthy family. Detectives initially suspected a maniac was responsible. At first, it appeared that this was a case of rape, but experienced detectives noticed clues suggesting a staged crime. The body appeared to be in an unusual position, as if caused by sexual violence. However, there were inconsistencies, such as underwear being missing but later found 100 meters away. The detective's suspicions were quickly validated. Forensic analysis found no male DNA, indicating that rape hadn't occurred. The case drew intense media attention, leading to journalists swarming the park. Details of the case were leaked to the media and detectives' theories immediately made headlines. This information is often distorted and comes with falsehoods and rumors. The police successfully kept the victim's name confidential long enough to avoid disrupting the investigation. When Jennifer's mother learned of the incident, she hurried to Central Park and was confronted with her worst fear: her daughter had died. During that tragic moment, reporters surrounded she and continuously asked her questions. Soon after, friends and other family members of Jennifer arrived. And Jennifer's father informed her classmates about the tragedy. Jennifer's family and friends provided the police with crucial information to aid the investigation. It was discovered that the night before her murder, Jennifer planned to spend time with two friends. Her father had given her a diary where she noted her upcoming plans, helping to trace the incident leading to the brutal murder. The primary suspect was Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, Dorian, whom she had recently broken up with. He is believed to have held a grudge against her, which may have been the motive for the murder. It was revealed that he had met Jennifer at a Mexican restaurant the evening before the crime. At that time, there were no social networks, mobile phones, or computers to enable rapid information exchange. Detectives gathered information very slowly. They learned that starting at 2:30 a.m., Jennifer was at a bar with the boyfriends of two friends. Around 3:45, one friend left, and shortly after, the other went home. Just before this, Robert arrived at the bar. Jennifer started paying attention to him, and they stayed together until the party ended. Robert was the last person to see her alive. Detectives went to question Robert, who was a 19-year-old living near Central Park. They immediately noticed scratches on his face, and this seemed suspicious. He claimed a cat had caused, but no one believed him. When told that his girlfriend, Jennifer, was dead, he seemed shocked and genuinely worried. He cooperated with the investigation and began answering questions. Robert met Jennifer at the bar party around 3 a.m. They talked about her going to university. As the party was winding down and people started leaving, he and she stayed until around 4 a.m. They then left the bar, said goodbye, and headed home separately. Robert claimed he didn't know what happened afterward and denied involvement in Jennifer's death. She was killed between 4 o'clock and 6 a.m., and a forensic expert later confirmed her death likely occurred around 5:30. Investigators suspect Robert because he was the last person Jennifer was with, and the scratches on his face suggested a struggle. As a result, Robert became the primary suspect. Detectives tried to catch Robert in a lie, but he kept repeating his story like it was rehearsed. The interrogation lasted nearly 12 hours until Robert made a slip and slightly altered his account. This helped investigators get the necessary information they were looking for. They succeeded in getting Robert to confess, which happened under the watchful media presence, with reporters listening from the next room. Less than 24 hours after Jennifer Levin's body was found, Robert Chambers confessed to her manslaughter. According to Robert, he took a walk with Jennifer that night in Central Park. However, during the walk, she attacked him and attempted to have sex without his consent. She tied his hands with her underwear. The girl was very passionate and liked to experiment. Then, she scratched him and grabbed his genitals, causing him to scream and ask her to stop. Robert claims that she only increased the pressure instead of stopping. This story seemed so unbelievable that it made the detectives laugh and also brought shocked reactions from journalists. Robert says he was forced to defend himself due to Jennifer's aggressive actions. He managed to free his hands and, attempting to push her away, hit her with great force unintentionally. She hit a tree, then she fell down and died. He kept calling her to wake up, but she showed no response or signs of life. Not wanting to touch her, he sat next to a crowbar and waited, hoping she would wake up, but she never did. Eventually, he left the scene and observed from a distance as the police arrived. Robert insisted he was not guilty. He claimed he acted in self-defense against Jennifer's aggression. He expressed that he had no intention to harm her, as he really liked her. The investigators questioning why he didn't call for help. They believe if she had received medical help sooner, she might have survived. Robert explained that he feared being arrested. Following his interrogation, he was charged with murder. His family quickly hired a prominent lawyer, Jack Littman, who immediately petitioned the judge for Robert's release. The lawyer argued that Robert was innocent and that his actions were self-defense. The lawyer Jack portrayed Jennifer as a slut who lured Robert into a trap and tried to rape him, and he was simply defending himself. Jack argued that Jennifer injured Roberts and she coincidentally died during his self-defense. This unusual defense strategy captured public attention. New York's media and information boards were filled with sensational headlines discussing the case. However, there were supporters of Jennifer as well. They viewed he as a decent, handsome, and successful. Robert was considered an intelligent and promising young man. He was a devout Irish Catholic and could not have deliberately committed such a heinous crime, as it would have destroyed his perfect life. Outwardly, he seems incapable of killing. Many people wondered why Robert, an attractive young man, would force a girl to have sex, since he was famous and had a lot of female attention. Robert's lawyer, Jack, tried his best to keep him from being held responsible for the murder. Jack even managed to get he featured on the cover of several magazines, such as New York Magazine. He appeared in a blue suit and red tie, resembling a fashion model rather than a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Robert actively smeared Jennifer's reputation, and this strategy was so effective that many people developed a biased view against his. Gradually, all media and the public sided with the defense. They believe that Jennifer is a woman with an evil personality. After meeting Robert, she went to Central Park to have sex with him and attacked him. However, a group of city volunteers specializing in crime prevention and many others strongly opposed it. They realized that Robert's lawyer was lying. They were furious with the lawyer. Besides, they also accused Robert of tarnishing Jennifer's reputation. Despite this, the public accepted the lawyer's lie, and Robert's supporters actively spread rumors that Jennifer was reckless and promiscuous. This made it possible for Robert to be released on bail. The lawyers then developed a more plausible version of incident, yet continued to defame Jennifer. They argued that Jennifer liked rough sex and accidentally died in the meantime, claiming the encounter began consensually and ended tragically by accident. This story gained unexpected support when Jennifer's father submitted her diary to the media. It was rumored to document her sexual relationships in detail. Later, the media has hyped it up as a sex diary, though it only described relationships with a few individuals, lacking any explicit or provocative content. Despite this, the diary entries were ruled inadmissible, which had already harmed Jennifer's reputation. The prosecutor's office had difficulty formulating a strategy and grasping the engine of this challenging case. Why did a boy from a wealthy family commit murder? A significant step in addressing this was analyzing Robert's past. Although only 19 years old, but he had committed over 3 burglaries, targeting wealthy homes in prestigious areas. His life was not as ideal as he portrayed. His mother not wealthy, she worked as a nurse in a private clinic and spent all her free time working to earn money. Without a source of income, Robert turned to crime and theft to maintain the image of a well-off young man and to support his drug addiction. He had been using drugs since he was 14 and had undergone several treatments, but none were successful. Robert struggled to graduate high school and later entered college, but he to be expelled due to substance issues and poor academic performance. He then attended Boston University, but faced similar problems. Many people knew he as an addict with a reputation for being dangerous. Jennifer had planned to break up with Roberts, and that might have been what led to the incident at the bar that night. One of Jennifer's friends reported seeing Robert searching through her purse. He attempted to steal $40 and became angry when questioned by her. She was appalled at how low he had fallen. This occurred shortly before she was discovered dead in the park. The investigation confirmed that her expensive earrings had been stolen. True to the nature of someone with an addiction, he simply removed the jewelry after the murder and sold it to buy drugs. Nonetheless, there was a chance that the hearings might not consider his criminal past. A year after the murder, headlines about Jennifer's brutal murder in New York's Central Park were still in the newspapers. Finding 12 jurors who are not familiar with the case, are fair, and can render a correct verdict is a difficult task. They had to vet 486 people to find the required number of jurors. On the trial day, dozens of reporters were in the courtroom. Robert maintained his story about a genital attack and blamed Jennifer. He claiming he acted in self-defense and he just accidentally caused her death. However, experts have pointed out that Jennifer had marks on her neck, indicating that she had been in a violent and prolonged struggle. Numerous injuries indicated she fought against being strangled. The deep scratches on Robert's face were caused by her while fighting back. For a month, the case was highly contentious. Witnesses gave conflicting information, creating many doubts and questions, leading the jury to deliberate. Ultimately, they have fallen into a deadlock, and the possibility that Robert would escape punishment. On the 9th day, it was decided to annul the trial results and declare a mistrial. The prosecution's only hope was a plea deal. Robert was offered to plead guilty to manslaughter, and eventually, he accepted. On March 25, 1988, in court, Robert expressed remorse. He admitted guilt for a lesser crime and apologized to Jennifer's family and friends for the suffering he caused. Consequently, he received a lenient sentence of 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Before the sentencing, Robert was released on bail, during which he held a farewell party. A girl at the party captured the event on a video camera. During the party, he got drunk, and he too confessed to the crime on camera, showing no remorse and even making jokes about the incident. Once in prison, Robert immediately became a troublemaker. He participated in assaults and repeatedly violated rules related to weapons and prohibited substances. As a result, his requests for parole were denied, and he served the entire 15-year sentence. Robert was released in 2003. Subsequently, Jennifer's family filed a civil lawsuit against Robert. They won the case, with the court ordering Robert to pay the family $25 million. However, it is unlikely they will receive this money because Robert lacks the funds. Robert remained silent about the incident that tragic night. However, in 2003, he spoke to the media for the first time. He seemed weighed down by guilt over killing a young student. He viewed this interview as a chance to unburden himself. He wished to speak out. He discussed the victim, Jennifer Levin, claiming he thought about her daily. The interview lasted 4 hours, with tension high throughout. Robert acknowledged that he could never make up for the pain he caused the Jennifer family. He realized that not only did he take their daughter away from her parents and friends, but he also created a web of lies. Despite this, he did not see himself as a monster because he felt remorse. Robert believed that if he were truly a monster, he would feel nothing. He admitted he was foolish and made the biggest mistake of his life. He recognized that stupidity often accompanied his actions. Although he was a criminal, but Robert did not seek forgiveness from the public because he believed it was impossible. However, he wanted to apologize and find a way to back up his words. For the past 15 years, Robert has been imprisoned, he believing this has atoned for his guilt. He admitted he was genuinely afraid, partly because he had to speak to the media. Nevertheless, he chose to speak because he felt it was his duty. After Robert was released from prison, he really wanted to make up for his mistakes. However, after missing out on major social changes during his incarceration, he had a hard time starting over. His lack of understanding about responsibility had contributed to the tragic death of Jennifer, a young woman. In an interview, he admitted that responsibility is now a key focus in his life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Farquharson family. At around 8 p.m. on September 4, 2005, a man emerged from the water near Lake Victoria in Australia, soaked and distressed. He flagged down a passing car, desperately seeking help. The man said that the car he was in, carrying 3 children, had crashed into a fence and fallen into the water. The man was later identified as Robert Farquharson, the children's father. Inside the submerged car were his 2-year-old son Bailey, 7-year-old Tyler, and 10-year-old Jai. Robert asked the driver to take him to the children's mother, who lived 8 kilometers from the lake. The driver complied and called emergency services at 000 to report the accident during the journey. As word spread, people flocked to the scene and some even dove into the water, hoping to rescue the children, but their efforts were futile. The car remained submerged and unreachable. Eventually, police, medical personnel, and rescuers arrived to assist. Robert explained to the police that while he had managed to escape the sinking car, he was unable to free the children, prompting him to seek help. His mobile phone had malfunctioned due to water damage, forcing him to stop a passing car for assistance. The search and rescue operation faced challenges due to darkness, and Robert could not pinpoint where the car had gone underwater. Although the water was cold, the divers continued their search for the car, aiming to help the children trapped inside. Time was critical, as the chances of survival diminished rapidly. It was essential to act quickly before the car filled with water. Around 2 a.m., divers recovered the bodies of the 3 children from the water. The car was about 30 meters from shore, submerged at a depth of 7.5 meters. Inside, the children were desperately trying to escape. They unbuckled their seatbelts, but tragically, they were unable to escape. Jai's body was found in the front door, while Tyler and Bailey were still in the back seat. Cindy, the boy's mother, was in shock after losing 3 sons in a flash. She was hospitalized and given sedatives to help her cope with her grief. Meanwhile, Robert was also hospitalized with hypothermia and minor injuries. The Farquharsons were well regarded in the community and were considered a model family. Cindy and Robert met in 1990. They welcomed their first child, Jai, in late 1994, their second, Tyler, in 1998, and eventually married in 2000. Bailey, their third child, was born 2 years later. Jai, the oldest brother, aspired to be a fireman or rescuer. On the day of the tragedy, he helped his younger brothers unbuckle their belts in an attempt to save everyone, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so. Tyler, the middle brother, is known for his playful and prankish nature, while the youngest, Bailey, is only 2 years old and is very attached to his brothers. The boy's parents had divorced several years before the tragedy. The children lived with Cindy, but Robert visited regularly and maintained open communication with them. The tragic day was also Father's Day, and the boys spent time with their father. Cindy gave Robert a set of pots and a framed photo of his sons as gifts for the occasion. Robert took the children to KFC for lunch, then they stopped at a store to buy a new baseball bat before going to their mother's house. On the way, an accident occurred. After recovering, Robert was questioned by the police. He claimed he was not speeding, but during the drive, he had a severe coughing fit that caused him to lose control of the car. The car crashed into a fence and ended up in the water, sliding several meters before starting to sink. The children in the car were screaming. Robert managed to surface to call for help and intended to go back to rescue the children, but he was unable to do so. A toxicology report found that Robert had not consumed alcohol or used illegal drugs on the day of the incident. He had just recovered from the flu and was suffering from a severe cough. Although the incident was ruled an accident, the police needed to conduct a thorough investigation. A memorial was set up on the shore of the lake, where people brought flowers, candles, and toys in memory of the children. Robert felt guilty about the accident and sought forgiveness from his ex-wife. He expressed that he tried his best to save the children but was unable to do so. His family members supported him during this difficult time, and Cindy defended Robert, believing in his innocence. She accepted that the children's deaths were a tragic accident. Forensic experts at the accident scene were puzzled by the absence of skid marks or braking marks on the road, which were expected to be present. They later found that when the car was discovered, its ignition and headlights were off, and the rear doors were locked. This raised questions. How could this have happened? Could it be that the father intentionally did this instead of trying to save his children? On September 11th, Cindy and Robert were released from the hospital and were able to hold a burial for their boys. Approximately 600 people attended the ceremony, with nearly the entire community coming to offer their condolences. The local residents who supported the family during this tragic time were also mourning alongside the heartbroken parents, who were struggling to cope. Robert's car was taken for inspection to check its overall functionality, especially the brakes and steering system. There might have been a technical issue that caused the brakes to fail. Police continued their work at the lake, trying to piece together how the incident occurred and why, with the goal of making the area safer. They attempted to recreate the events using the same car, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The steering wheel did not turn far enough to the right for the car to slide into the lake. This led police to question Robert's account, and he was asked to come to the police station for further questioning. He repeated the same story but couldn't clearly explain why the car's ignition, heating, and headlights were off. There were no signs of skidding or braking on the road. Police offered him a lie detector test, which Robert agreed to, but he failed. Experts determined that reaching the water would require turning the steering wheel sharply to the right by 220 degrees. If Robert had merely lost control due to coughing, he wouldn't have made such a sudden turn. He would have just gone off the road and not into the water. All checks on the car showed it was in perfect working condition, with no issues with the brakes, steering, headlights, or ignition. Therefore, police believed the actions were deliberate. The case was referred to the Homicide Division, and a detailed investigation began. An autopsy on the boys revealed they drowned, but their bodies had numerous abrasions and bruises, suggesting they may have been injured before their deaths. 3 months later, Robert was arrested and charged with the murder of the boys. He was shocked by the accusations and insisted that he was innocent, claiming that it was a tragic accident. Soon after, a witness came forward, one of Robert's friends, who revealed that just days before the incident, Robert had expressed his desire to harm his children, then end his life as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. Because after the divorce, Cindy got everything: a nice house, a luxury car, money, and even she started dating another man and seemed happy, with plans to remarry. Robert was jealous of her, but at the time his friend did not believe he would do it. Robert later confessed to this friend that he had deliberately drowned their children as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. He was released on $200,000 bail before the trial because the judge considered the incident an accident and decided that he did not pose a threat to society. As part of his bail conditions, Robert was required to stay home and wear a tracking bracelet. The trial began in August 2007. During the trial, Robert's ex-wife Cindy expressed her belief that he did not intentionally kill their children. She characterized him as a devoted family man. Cindy found it hard to comprehend why Robert would harm their children, even if he were upset with her. However, she acknowledged that Robert had been unhappy with her new relationship and had previously said he wouldn't let the children live with her new partner or pay alimony. Cindy firmly believed that the incident was an accident. She recalled suggesting to Robert that he spend Father's Day with the children. She sent her sons off at 3 p.m., and their father picked them up, with the expectation that they would return home by 7:30 p.m. Around 8 p.m., she was shocked to find a soaked and frantic Robert at her door. After learning about the accident, Cindy's new partner, Stephen, quickly drove to the lake. He began diving in, searching for the car to rescue the children. Robert, accompanied by his lawyer, maintained that it was an accident. A local resident who was near the lake that day testified at the trial about Robert's behavior while he waited for the boys to be rescued. The witness noted that Robert seemed more focused on finding a cigarette than on his children, which surprised him. When asked why he wasn't more worried about his children, Robert did not respond and did not attempt to dive into the water to save them. Another driver who stopped to help also provided testimony. He noted that Robert did not ask him to call for help but instead wanted a ride to see his wife. By that time, Robert appeared to have accepted that the children were dead. The driver was confused because Robert wanted to see his wife instead of seeking help for the children. Although confused, the driver took Robert with him and gave him a phone to call for help. However, Robert refused, saying that it was too late and the children were dead. The driver later felt that Robert might be mentally unstable. Regretting his decision to follow Robert's wishes, the driver called the emergency services himself, wishing he had done more to save the children. A nearby police officer commented on Robert's lack of emotion, saying that he did not act like a father who had just lost 3 sons. In contrast, the children's mother appeared very confused, pulling her hair, crying and begging for help, while Robert was barely responsive. Cindy and Stephen, Her new partner joined the rescuers to help, while Robert didn't mention his cough, which he claimed had led to his loss of control, until 11 days later. During the trial, the doctor who treated Robert confirmed that Robert was indeed ill. Robert was coughing a lot and felt weak and lethargic. However, the doctor believed that the cough would not have caused Robert to turn the wheel so suddenly. After the divorce, Robert suffered from depression, mental instability, and personality disorder. He regularly saw a psychiatrist. On the morning before the tragedy, Robert told the psychiatrist that he had forgotten to take his antidepressants. The prosecution presented evidence that there were no skid marks or brake marks on the road, and that the back door was locked and the headlights were off, which could not have happened accidentally. The prosecution argued that Robert had tried to kill the children out of revenge against Cindy, primarily because he wanted to avoid paying her child support. The jury found these arguments convincing, and on October 5, 2007, they found Robert Farquharson guilty. He was sentenced to the maximum sentence of 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. In sentencing, the judge stated that Robert's actions had destroyed his entire family in revenge against Cindy and had also ruined his own life. Cindy, the children's mother, fainted after hearing the verdict and had to be rushed to the hospital because she did not expect the verdict to be like that. After the trial, she was very confused by the experts' opinions. That Robert had intentionally killed the children to get revenge on her. Cindy wanted to visit Robert in prison to understand the truth of what happened, but he refused to see her. Cindy sued her ex-husband, Robert, for pain and suffering as well as for the death of their 3 children. As a result, Robert was found guilty and ordered to pay her $225,000 Australian dollars. Later, it was discovered that the friend who testified against Robert during the trial had a history of violence and multiple convictions, which raised doubts about his credibility. With this new information, Robert and his lawyer filed an appeal, which was accepted on December 17, 2009. Robert was released on bail of $200,000 Australian dollars on December 21. Due to errors in the judicial process, a new trial was scheduled, beginning in May 2010. During the trial, a new witness testified, a woman who said she was driving behind Robert's car near the lake. She described the car as moving at a normal speed before it suddenly swerved to the right multiple times. Inside the car, she saw 3 children, and she noted that Robert was purposefully guiding his boys toward the water. He did not attempt to brake or change direction. Most notably, Robert remained calm and did not cough while sitting behind the wheel. The woman drove away quickly and did not realize that Robert had driven his car into the water. She thought he would simply stop by the lake. She later learned about the tragedy on TV the next day and came to understand that Robert had intentionally drowned his children. She had been unable to contact anyone sooner because she was receiving cancer treatment in the hospital. After witness testimony, Cindy developed a deep hatred for Robert, believing that he had intentionally taken the lives of her children. She was convinced of his guilt and asked the court to sentence him to life in prison, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Cindy had Robert's name removed from her children's records and from their gravestones. On July 22, 2010, the jury again found Robert guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. In 2010, Cindy married Stephen and they had 2 sons together. Sadly, Cindy passed away in May 2022 at the age of 50. Robert remains in prison, serving his sentence. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Donald Mellon. Donald Mellon grew up in a loving environment, enjoying a happy childhood in a wealthy family that owned a McDonald's in the western suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. He was financially well off and attracted many girls, but he longed for a real family. He shunned superficial relationships and fleeting encounters. Eventually, he met his first love, Karen Dawson. Their relationship initially portrayed an ideal picture of a happy family, where Donald was a loving father and family man who was adored by his 3 daughters. He, along with his wife Karen and their children, enjoyed a comfortable life together. However, over the years, Donald developed problems with alcohol. Despite the impact on his family, he refused to seek help or stop drinking, eventually leading Karen to make the difficult decision to divorce him. This loneliness changed Donald dramatically. His old self seemed to have disappeared completely. He now sported exotic tattoos and spent his time partying at clubs, frequenting a strip club on Bourbon Street. As a regular, the club manager introduced him to Rebecca, a 23-year-old girl who had recently arrived from Nebraska. After escaping an abusive marriage, she is looking for a fresh start with her young son. Rebecca was born in Newport Beach, California, but spent most of her childhood in Omaha, Nebraska. She describes her childhood as being in a very religious household. As she entered her teens, Rebecca recounted experiences of being molested by men. She felt a lack of closeness with her parents and experienced rejection throughout her adolescence. At one point, she was placed in the custody of the Nebraska Child Welfare Department and moved between different foster homes. This sense of loneliness followed her throughout her life. When Rebecca expressed her desire to leave Omaha, her ex-boyfriend reacted violently, throwing her across the room. She was often bruised, and when she hinted at wanting to leave, he threatened her with a gun. Feeling that her life was in danger, she decided that she could no longer stay with her abusive boyfriend. One night, she escaped and ran away to Minnesota. At a cheap motel, an employee suggested that she move to Arizona, praising the beauty of the place. Rebecca really wanted to go to this place, but she decided to wait until a better time. Rebecca found a job as a sales clerk at a shopping mall, where she met a young man and they quickly got engaged in Las Vegas. He was 19 and she was 18. Their love grew stronger, and soon after, she gave birth to a son. However, their happy story took a turn for the worse. After her husband quit his job, Rebecca faced more hardships. To support her family, she began dancing at nightclubs. Fate brought Rebecca to a strip club, where she earned a good income and was able to support her family, while a nanny looked after her son. However, returning home after work was difficult because her husband, an unemployed and often drunk man, not only relied on her but also often insulted her. Eventually, Rebecca decided to leave her husband. She confided in one of her wealthy regular clients about her situation, and he gave her $20,000 to help her escape to Arizona. To protect herself, she gave a photo of her husband to the bouncers at the club, instructing them not to let him in or reveal her whereabouts. She relocated to a new apartment in East Phoenix and switched to a different nightclub. There, she met Donald. Initially, Donald wasn't fond of Rebecca, but over time, Donald became deeply infatuated with her. He loved her so much that he was willing to welcome her and her 11-year-old son into his life. However, Donald's daughters disapproved of Rebecca, believing she had a negative effect on their father. Despite their concerns, Rebecca moved in with Donald in October 2003, and they married 2 years later. Everything seemed fine until 6 months later when problems began to emerge. Rebecca, now 36, developed an alcohol addiction, influenced by her husband. Together, they drank continuously, neglecting meals. On July 31, 2012, around 10 p.m., a visibly intoxicated Rebecca called the police. She was slurring her speech and requested an ambulance for her husband, who she claimed was bleeding heavily. The police and paramedics quickly arrived at the scene to assist Donald but were taken aback by the situation. Rebecca sat calmly on the couch with a cigarette in her hand, while Donald lay bleeding on the floor beside her. As the paramedics worked on Donald, the police observed Rebecca with growing suspicion. Her apparent indifference to her husband's serious condition raised questions. They also noticed a gun protruding from beneath the pillows next to the dog and a bullet hole in the frame of her wedding portrait on the wall. In light of these findings, the police decided to take Rebecca into custody. When police questioned Rebecca about what happened, she claimed that she couldn't remember the details regarding Donald. She stated that she had just left her room when she saw him bleeding on the floor, and she immediately called 911. After answering a few more questions, she unexpectedly fell asleep during the interrogation. Donald died in the hospital a few hours later, prompting the police to start a murder investigation. Before detectives could proceed, Donald's daughters discovered that he had left a voicemail at 2:44 p.m. In the message, he asked them to call him back, and they heard a loud bang just as the message was sent. The daughters were shocked and confused when they learned of their father's death from the police. They were heartbroken to learn that these were their father's last words. After receiving their first lead, the police started investigating the crime scene and were taken aback to discover that CCTV cameras were monitoring the house. What shocked them even more was that the entire murder of Donald was captured on video. Rebecca was left alone with Donald after her son went to sleep at a friend's house. She picked up a gun and entered the living room while Donald was recording a voice message for his daughter. He was unaware of her presence until she fired the first shot. The bullet grazed his head and struck Rebecca's wedding portrait. In surprise and pain, he screamed and fell to the floor next to the couch. Rebecca returned to her room and changed into a t-shirt. She then returned to the living room and shot her husband, Donald, in the head. As blood poured across the room, she sat on the couch next to him as he died. She lit a cigarette and watched him bleed for 23 minutes before finally calling 911. The scene was so horrific that the footage was never made public. Surveillance videos clearly showed that it was a cold-blooded murder. When questioned, her story kept changing. Eventually, she claimed that Donald was planning to hire someone to kill her and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. On July 31st, while Donald was on the phone, Rebecca overheard the plan he was discussing. In a state of panic, she grabbed the gun, went into the living room, and fired, but she could not remember what happened after that. As police dug deeper into their story, they uncovered disturbing details about the couple's circumstances. Their home was filled with excessive drinking, creating an unhealthy atmosphere for raising children. Rebecca expressed concern for her teenage son, who witnessed everything. Together, Donald and Rebecca were on a path of self-destruction, amassing not only alcohol but also a frightening collection of weapons. They seemed to drink constantly, leading to a concerning situation. Friends revealed that Donald had been controlling of Rebecca from the beginning of their relationship. He pressured her to quit her job at a strip club. He also frequently criticized and insulted her. He even forced Rebecca to get a tattoo of his name, claiming it was a way to mark her. In April 2006, after a night of drinking at a bar, Rebecca and Donald got into an argument that escalated into a physical fight. Donald began to violently beat Rebecca. A deputy sheriff from a neighboring county happened to witness the incident and decided to follow them, calling the police for assistance. The deputy reported seeing Rebecca trying to escape from Donald, who then approached her and struck her on the head. Rebecca fell to the ground, and Donald subsequently grabbed her and attempted to take her to a waiting taxi. At that moment, the police intervened and detained them. Rebecca had a bloody nose, scratches on her lips, and blood stains on her shirt. When the officer attempted to photograph her injuries, she turned away and gave him the middle finger. Although the officer witnessed the incident, Rebecca defended her husband, insisting that he had done nothing wrong and that she had simply tripped and fallen. She told the police they were wasting their time and that she would not leave him. Donald had a small cut on his cheek and around his right eye. He told the officer that he and Rebecca were having a normal conversation. He denied it was an argument, claiming she turned to face him and tripped, causing her face to hit his. Donald was arrested on assault charges but was released shortly afterward. He also denied any wrongdoing. In December 2006, police were called to the Donald home shortly after midnight by someone who reported a domestic dispute. The caller mentioned an argument between the couple, during which Donald broke a pool table and knocked it over. A witness noted that the couple frequently had arguments that became violent. When the officers arrived, they found the couple arguing in the dressing room. Donald was standing over her, yelling, while she sat on the floor in tears. Rebecca refused to explain why she was crying and even declined to give the police her name. She yelled at the officers to leave her house, which led to her arrest on suspicion of obstructing justice. By March 2011, the Donald had relocated to West Phoenix. The police arrived after someone triggered the alarm. Donald informed the police that his wife had injured her face. He was unsure who activated the alarm but suspected it was the dog. In the bedroom, the officers spoke with Rebecca, who gave her name. She looked at a female officer and whispered, "Help me." As is routine, the officers began asking questions to assess her situation. After a brief conversation, the officers concluded that Rebecca was in danger and arrested her husband on suspicion of domestic violence. When the officers told Rebecca that her husband had been arrested, she became angry and said, "You don't know what you just did to me," Rebecca cried, "He's going to kill me." The officers offered to take her to a relative's house or a shelter, but she refused. They left a domestic violence flyer on her bed before leaving. In the summer of 2012, Rebecca told her psychologist that her husband had become extremely paranoid and suspected that she was plotting against him. By that time, the Donald were living in a $400,000 home in the Willa area of downtown Phoenix. Rebecca mentioned that Donald had changed the locks, and only he had a key. She also noted that he had installed cameras throughout the house to monitor her. A subsequent investigation revealed that the surveillance camera system had been installed after their home had been burglarized, with cameras positioned both inside and outside the property. In late July 2012, Rebecca decided she wanted to leave her husband. She claimed he had broken her iPod, damaged her phone, and locked her inside the house. During a session with a psychologist, she expressed feeling trapped and hopeless. On the night of July 31, 2012, they hosted former neighbors with whom they had a good relationship. The neighbors noticed Rebecca was drinking heavily and voiced their concerns before leaving, which upset her husband. Rebecca claimed that she and her husband had argued that night. She said he threw her across the room, leaving her scared and having to reach for a weapon. The incident was not caught on surveillance cameras, however, police discovered footage that showed multiple instances of violence, both from Donald and sometimes from Rebecca. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by intense emotions, conflict, and years of violent arguments. Surveillance cameras captured multiple instances of Donald pushing Rebecca to the ground, hitting her on the head, and occasionally choking her. On one occasion, he even grabbed her legs and threw her into the pool. After her arrest, Rebecca claimed she acted in self-defense. But it was clear that Rebecca had fired the shots. In a reduced sentence, Rebecca pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. During her trial, she admitted that she had been drinking that night and could not remember what happened afterward. While he lay bleeding, she sat and calmly smoked a cigarette. Moreover, the trial revealed undeniable evidence. A video of the incident was shown in court, leading the jury to convict Rebecca of first-degree murder. She received a life sentence in prison, with the possibility of parole in 20 years, making her eligible for release in 2032. After her sentence was announced, Rebecca expressed her sorrow. Rebecca was escorted out of the courtroom, trying to approach her son while repeatedly telling him that she loved him. She kept her eyes on her son until the door closed behind her. Custody of her son was granted to his maternal grandmother. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Crystal Perry. Crystal Perry was born on August 23, 1963, in Rumford, Maine, a small town in the United States. As the youngest of 10 children, her parents faced great challenges in providing for their large family. In difficult circumstances, Crystal and her siblings grew up quite independently, with her parents being too busy to look after all the children. Fortunately, Crystal's older sister, who was only 12 years old when Crystal was born, took on the role of mother and looked after her younger brothers and sisters. Growing up in such a difficult environment, they all wanted to start their own lives as soon as possible, so her siblings lived in different cities and states. Crystal also dreamed of starting a family. While in high school, she met Tom and they eventually got married. Initially, they moved to California, but Crystal soon realized that city life was not for her. After a year and a half, they decided to return to Maine and settled in Bridgeton, a small town about an hour away from Crystal's hometown. The quaint town is famous for being the setting of Stephen King's novel, The Mist. Crystal worked at a local shoe store, while Tom held various part-time jobs. Later, Crystal found out she was pregnant and they welcomed their daughter, Sarah. Although Tom initially wanted to be a father, his relationship with Crystal became complicated after their daughter was born. He began spending more and more time at a local bar, wasting almost all of their money on alcohol. At one point, he even took all of Crystal's savings to buy groceries, leaving them without food. The financial burden of Tom's drinking problem became too much for their relationship, and Crystal eventually decided to file for divorce. After the divorce, Tom still visited his daughter occasionally, but he was not actively involved in her life. The situation became worse when Tom started dating someone new and his girlfriend began harassing Crystal, constantly calling and threatening her, visiting her house and causing chaos in public, all because she could not accept Crystal's previous marriage to Tom. Crystal was hesitant about Sarah visiting her father because she was worried that his new girlfriend could endanger Sarah's safety. After her parents' divorce, Crystal moved in with her mother. She spent years saving money, and finally, she was able to buy her own house. The house was located in the suburb of Bridgeton, near a peaceful lake and a forest. Crystal and Sarah were delighted to finally have a place they could call their own. Crystal grew up in a large family, so when she had her own daughter, she gave her as much time, attention, and love as she could. After a long day at work, Crystal and her daughter, Sarah, would often rent a movie or just talk for hours. One evening, on May 10, 1994, when Crystal was 30 and Sarah was 12, they watched the solar eclipse together. The next day went as usual. Crystal went to work and Sarah went to school. That evening, they had dinner and Crystal put Sarah to bed. A few hours later, Sarah woke to the sound of her mother screaming. At first, she thought Crystal was on the phone, arguing with someone. However, she quickly realized the situation was much more serious. Crystal's screams were loud and frantic, making Sarah think someone was attacking her mother. With the bedroom door ajar, Sarah mustered up the courage to approach, despite her mounting fear. She moved closer to the door, and as she listened, she realized the scream was coming from the kitchen. However, from where she stood, Sarah couldn't see what was happening. Sarah was terrified, not daring to move or make a sound, afraid of revealing her location. Then she heard footsteps, and her heart sank as she assumed that her mother's attacker was now coming for her. In a desperate attempt to escape, she hid behind the bed and waited anxiously for the door to open. However, instead of the door, she heard the sound of a kitchen drawer sliding open, followed by the sound of someone rummaging through utensils. Her mother's continuous screams and desperate pleas for forgiveness filled the house, and in the next few seconds, Sarah heard what sounded like someone had started stabbing her mother with a knife. With each brutal stab, her mother's cries grew fainter and fainter until they strangely stopped. Gathering her courage, Sarah finally left the room and went to the kitchen. What she saw was a horrifying sight. The only light came from the moon shining through the window, as the kitchen lights were off. The clock on the wall read 1 a.m. When she entered the kitchen, she saw her mother lying on the floor in a large pool of blood that covered the entire floor. Despite her shock, Sarah knew she had to call for help immediately. Next to her mother's hand was a phone. Sarah quickly picked up the phone and dialed 911, but she only received complete silence on the other end of the line. She then ran to Crystal's room to try the second phone. But unfortunately, it didn't work either. Despite trying several times and getting the same result, Sarah realized that she had only one option left: to seek help from the neighbors. Braving the cold of the May night in only her pajamas and bare feet, Sarah ran out of the house and into the street. Her main concern was to find someone to help her injured mother. She started running to the nearest house, about half a mile away, towards the center of the city. However, when she knocked repeatedly, no one answered. Undeterred, Sarah continued to run to other nearby houses, knocking on each door, but still no one answered. Finally, after several attempts at many houses, Sarah arrived at a local Italian restaurant, whose owner lived in the adjacent building. She knocked desperately and finally got an answer. The owner, shocked by Sarah's panicked state, let her in and listened as she explained the urgency of the situation. Her mother had been attacked and she desperately needed help. Sarah then called 911 herself and reported what had happened. The police immediately arrived at their home. When they examined the front door glass, they discovered a fingerprint, which they quickly identified as Sarah's. A thorough search of the crime scene found no other fingerprints. However, the kitchen floor revealed several bloody shoe prints. Police took photographs to determine the size and style of the shoes, suspecting they belonged to the killer. The shoe prints led to Sarah's bedroom but mysteriously stopped at the entrance, as if the killer had returned without entering the room. Police noticed two unusual details at the crime scene. It was clear that the killer had tried to wipe some of the blood off the floor. However, it was clear that the killer could not remove all of the blood, as there was blood everywhere. However, there were also other drops that fell to the floor at right angles, and judging by the splatters from a greater height, the police speculated that the killer had injured himself during the murder, and that the blood was theirs. This theory was reinforced by the discovery of a trail of blood leading to a roll of tissue paper, but there were no remaining rolls nearby. It is possible that the killer used the tissue paper to stop the bleeding after being injured during the murder, and then immediately left the crime scene. Medical experts discovered more than 50 stab wounds on Crystal's body, indicating that this was a violent and intentional attack. The murder weapon, later determined to be a kitchen knife, was not found at the scene, suggesting that the killer had taken it with them when they left. During this process, a piece of the knife broke off and was embedded in Crystal's body, further highlighting the force used. Additional testing revealed that Crystal had been sexually assaulted, allowing experts to collect DNA and blood samples from the perpetrator. Despite this crucial evidence, the investigation was plagued by unexpected delays. Due to a lack of funding, the local lab was overwhelmed, so it would take at least 6 months to get the results. This forced the police to begin their investigation without any concrete evidence. Initially, the police ruled out a robbery, as nothing appeared to have been missing from the house. They also noted that there were no signs of forced entry, leading them to conclude that the perpetrator was likely someone Crystal knew, as she likely opened the door for them. Since she was wearing pajamas at the time of the incident, it is unlikely that she was waiting for guests, leading police to speculate about a potential relationship between Crystal and her attacker. The police have two main theories about the case. Crystal knew the killer and let them in willingly, or the killer was a stranger who knocked on the door and tricked Crystal into opening the door. To gather more information, the police decide to start by questioning the only witness, Sarah. At the hospital, where Sarah is being checked, the police ask her why she ran to a neighbor's house for help instead of calling 911 from her own home. Sarah explains that she couldn't use her phone because it wasn't working, but the investigation finds this explanation suspicious, as both Sarah's and Crystal's phones were working properly when checked by the police at the crime scene. Police believe Sarah may have become confused due to the stress of the situation. Initially, they considered the possibility that the first phone was inoperable, as the first caller had turned off her phone and needed to reset it to make another call. As for the second phone, they did not rule out the possibility that Sarah may have dialed the wrong number in her haste or that the phone line may have been temporarily disconnected due to the rain. As the investigation continued, the police asked Sarah if she had seen the killer. Sarah replied that she had been in her bedroom during the incident. However, the police were a little skeptical of her story and asked how she knew her mother had been attacked with a knife. Sarah's explanation was that it was obvious. But the police continued to press her. They felt that she might be withholding some information and that she had actually seen the killer. In the 3 days after the murder, the police interviewed Sarah 18 times. They hoped her story would change, but she stuck to her original account of events. Then the police found their first important clue. A local shoe store had a pair of boots with soles that matched the bloody footprints found at the scene. They also discovered that Crystal had been harassed by Teresa, the girlfriend of her ex-husband Tom. Although the killer was clearly a man, the police decided to investigate Teresa because she had repeatedly threatened to kill Crystal. Teresa may have had someone help her commit the crime, but the police did not find any evidence to support this idea. During their investigation, they discovered that Crystal was in a relationship with a man named Dennis at the time of her death. The two had met 2 years before Dennis started working at the shoe store where Crystal worked. They began dating soon after and eventually became engaged, although they never married. The police found that their relationship was strained, with frequent arguments between the couple and Dennis sometimes engaging in aggressive behavior, such as breaking things and punching walls. However, the police did not find any evidence that he had ever harmed Crystal. The day after the murder, the police came to Dennis's house. When he opened the door, they asked him if he had left the night before or if he had seen Crystal. Dennis immediately responded by asking if Crystal was dead, and he passed out shortly after. After regaining consciousness, Dennis began answering the police's questions. He explained that he had originally planned to visit Crystal that evening, but he had been late for work because he had helped a friend fix his car. When he finally returned home, he called Crystal, but she told him it was too late to visit. This led to an argument and Dennis stayed home. Although the police could not be 100% sure that he was telling the truth, they were able to verify that he had helped his friend fix his car that evening. Dennis also voluntarily took a lie detector test, which the police found no signs of lying. Although the police noticed that he had the same shoe size as the killer, they did not find any matching shoes in Dennis's home. He agreed to provide a DNA sample, but he asked the police to do him a favor, saying that if they decided to arrest him, they should enter his workplace through the back door to avoid disturbing others. He explained that his boss had always treated him well and he did not want to disrupt work. During the investigation, the police contacted Crystal's best friend, who lived in another town. This friend shared a disturbing conversation she had had with Crystal just a few weeks earlier. In the story, Crystal expressed fear for Dennis. Their arguments escalated and Dennis became increasingly aggressive. Crystal considered ending the relationship but hesitated for fear of Dennis's reaction. The police then went to Crystal's workplace to further question her co-workers, but were unable to gather any useful information. As soon as the police left Crystal's workplace, Dennis entered and began asking what the co-workers had told the police. Despite the police's efforts, no evidence was found to implicate Dennis. and had to wait months for the DNA results, so they continued to search for other potential leads. This led them to a local man named Donnie, who had gotten drunk at a party and started bragging about killing Crystal. During the investigation, police brought Donnie in for questioning. However, the man claimed that he had no memory of attending a party and denied any involvement in the murder. Police later discovered that Donnie was an alcoholic and a notorious liar. In another development, a witness reported seeing a black pickup truck with New Hampshire plates near Crystal's neighborhood, but this lead ultimately went unanswered. Another witness came forward describing an incident in which she drove past Crystal's house on the night of the murder. She recalled hearing sirens, assuming they were related to her boyfriend, who lived down the street and was a frequent troublemaker. At the same time, she saw a car with headlights following her at high speed. Thinking that the driver was chasing her, she turned onto another street. However, the car passed her. Police have not been able to confirm whether the car was related to Crystal's murder. The investigation is still ongoing, and they have had difficulty finding any concrete evidence. In an effort to get the case back on track, Crystal's family has offered a $10,000 reward for any information and has posted flyers around town to attract potential witnesses. However, Crystal's ex-husband's girlfriend, Teresa, has been seen repeatedly tearing up these flyers. Crystal's ex-husband, Tom, was investigated thoroughly, but police eventually ruled him out as a suspect. He was an alcoholic and had become worse over the years, leaving him almost drunk. In this state, it seemed impossible for him to commit such a crime. And he had no apparent motive. The police investigated 2 other men Crystal had dated after her divorce, but found no connection between them and the crime. All the men, including Tom, provided DNA samples. The police waited for the test results, which took 9 months. When they did, they showed that the blood and semen samples did not match any of the suspects, including Dennis. With no new leads, the police requested a DNA sample from Dennis again for further testing, but the results remained the same. With no progress, they decided to re-interview their only witness, Sarah. They still believed that she was lying to them, or that her mind had blocked out the horrific memories of her mother's murder and that she had actually seen the killer. To investigate further, they traveled to Texas, where Sarah was living with her aunt, and took a polygraph test. The results showed no deception on Sarah's part. However, the police continued to interrogate her over and over again, asking the same questions. But she repeatedly insisted that she had not seen the killer. Ultimately, the case remained unsolved for years, with police continuing to interview witnesses and potential suspects, but without any significant breakthroughs. In the late 1990s, the FBI DNA database became available, allowing police to upload a DNA sample of Crystal's killer. However, no match was found. A new police officer took over the case in 1999, determined to review all the available evidence and collect more DNA samples from men in the town and surrounding areas. Advances in laboratory technology allowed for faster testing, and hundreds of samples were collected. Unfortunately, none of these samples matched the killer's DNA. The police also asked Sarah to work with a psychologist to explore the possibility of recovering repressed memories of the crime. Sarah agreed, but the psychologist concluded that her claim of not seeing the perpetrator was true and that she had not actually repressed any memories. Years passed. And despite the police's continued efforts, the case remained unsolved due to a lack of new leads. The case took a surprising turn in 2006 when police received news of a DNA match. A DNA sample entered into an FBI database matched blood and semen found at Crystal's crime scene. The DNA belonged to Michael Hutchinson, a man who had never been investigated or suspected in the case. Further investigation revealed that in 2003, Michael had been arrested and convicted of assault with a weapon, resulting in a 6-month prison sentence followed by 3 years of probation, during which time his DNA was collected. A DNA sample from Michael was initially collected but not uploaded to the FBI database and remained on file at the lab. Years later, Michael was arrested for driving drunk with a child in the car. After being released on bail, he failed to appear in court and was subsequently sent to jail. On the day of his wedding, Michael was arrested and taken into custody. A new DNA sample was taken from him, and this time, it was uploaded to the database immediately. Soon after, the police on Crystal's case received a match. They informed Sarah of the development but asked her to keep it a secret until formal charges were filed. The police also asked Sarah if she knew the suspect, and she said no. With Michael in custody, the police began to slowly build their case to ensure that the suspect had no chance of escaping punishment. They discovered that at the time of the murder, Michael lived in Bridgeton, just 2 miles from Crystal's home. Michael was 19 and lived near the Italian restaurant where Sarah called the police. Since Michael frequently visited his mother's house, just a short distance from Crystal's home, the police suspected that Michael may have seen Crystal on several occasions. The police visited Michael in prison and asked him about the murder, but Michael denied any involvement and claimed that he did not know Crystal. However, the police were skeptical of Michael's story, as his DNA was found on Crystal's body and his blood was found at the crime scene. While in custody, the police made an interesting observation about Michael. He had a large scar on the palm of his hand, which appeared to match the wound that Crystal's killer may have suffered during the murder. Although the scar alone was not enough to prove Michael guilty in court, the presence of his DNA firmly linked him to the crime. He was later charged with murder. The prosecution presented evidence that Michael, a user of illegal drugs, had frequently passed by Crystal's house, and that on the fateful night he decided to attack her. But he refused to plead guilty, so it is impossible to know how it all happened. But with the evidence available, the outcome was clear: Michael attacked and killed Crystal. During the trial, an explanation was also sought for the killer not leaving any fingerprints at the crime scene, as Michael worked as a bricklayer. Over time, people who do this work often have worn and torn patterns on their palms, making it impossible for them to leave fingerprints on the surface. In his testimony, Michael stated that he met Crystal at a bar and they went back to her place, where they had consensual sex. A man in a black motorcycle jacket broke into the house, attacked Michael, and killed Crystal. Michael regained consciousness and tried to fight off the attacker, but he was injured in the hand and the attacker escaped. However, Michael then left the crime scene without a valid reason, which raised doubts about his story. There were several inconsistencies, including the fact that the only shoe prints at the scene were Michael's, suggesting that if his testimony was true, the intruder would have had to remove his shoes before entering, which is highly unlikely. Additionally, there were no other signs of a break-in or struggle at the scene. The trial ended on April 9, 2007, with a guilty verdict for Michael. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Michael remains incarcerated to this day. The traumatic event of her mother's murder had a profound impact on Sarah. However, over time, she found the strength to rebuild her life. Sarah pursued further education, pursued a writing career, and eventually published a book chronicling her mother's murder, compiling all the available information. Furthermore, while writing the book, Sarah discovered new facts about the case that the police had overlooked. She discovered that Michael often borrowed his father's car, a black Ford pickup with New Hampshire license plates. This information was important because a witness had previously reported seeing a similar car near Crystal's house on the night of the murder. Another witness also reported seeing a car with its high beams speeding past her house that night. She initially thought the police were headed for her boyfriend's house because she mistook the sirens of an ambulance for police sirens. The woman's boyfriend was revealed to be Michael. The police had recorded his name and address in the report. However, they did not investigate him further at that time. Had the police investigated him further, They might have discovered the cut on his hand, potentially solving the case sooner. Unfortunately, past events cannot be changed. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Grace Mill Lane. Grace Emmy Rose Mill Lane was born on December 2, 1996, in Wickford, Essex, to Gillian and David Mill Lane. She is the youngest of 3 siblings and is known as a loving, outgoing, fun-loving, family-oriented, creative, and artistic girl. The family is very close, so Grace keeps in touch with her siblings and parents every day, even while studying advertising and marketing at Lincoln University, where she is living away from home. In 2018, 21-year-old Grace Mill Lane graduated with a BA in advertising and marketing. Like many young people her age, Grace decided to take a year off before settling down in her career to celebrate the completion of her university degree. She chose to take a year off to travel around South America before going to New Zealand to tour. In October 2018, Grace embarked on a 10-month solo adventure. First, she traveled to Peru. Then, on November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, preparing for a 2-week stay on the North Island. During her time in New Zealand, Grace met a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, whom she had matched with on Tinder. Jesse was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand. He grew up in Wellington. As a child, his parents divorced, and he was raised by his grandparents for a time. As a teenager, he moved to Australia with his mother. However, in 2016, he returned to New Zealand and lived in a hostel in Wellington. Little did Grace know that Jesse had a dark side. He was known to be very charismatic, using his charm to manipulate others. Jesse struggled to keep a job or a place to live for long due to his constant lying. On one occasion, he lied to his former landlord, claiming to be a newly signed professional baseball player with the New Zealand national baseball team, the Black Sox. He pretended that his contract money would soon be transferred to pay rent. This deception lasted for 2 months until the landlord confirmed with Black Sox management that they had no idea who he was. Unfortunately, the landlord also learned that Jesse had run away without warning, costing him over $1,700. On multiple occasions, Jesse claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, that he came from a millionaire family wanting to buy a top restaurant in Auckland, and that he had connections in the New Zealand Immigration Department, among other lies. However, the truth is that Jesse is simply a delusional person, only able to impress others with his wild fabrications. His former roommates at Green Lane found him creepy and untrustworthy before he moved into City Life apartments. A woman he lived with claimed that he stole money from her house and then ran away. This cost the landlord at City Life thousands of dollars after Jesse lied about receiving a monthly salary and not paying rent. Jesse is a mystery to many. He often lies and frequently gets away with it. Back in the hostel where Grace was staying, she was happily conversing with Jesse. She was charmed by Jesse, even sending a text to her close friend Anna back home, telling her that she clicked with this guy. As her 22nd birthday was the next day, she decided to meet Jesse, who lived nearby, to get to know him better. On the day they were supposed to meet, Grace was preparing for her big party, feeling excited and optimistic about the evening ahead. She left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. and walked into the city center in a black dress, holding a small handbag, unaware that she was about to encounter a tragic event. The evening went off without a hitch as they went to a local bar and left together around 9:30 p.m. The next day was Grace's 22nd birthday, and her family and friends tried to contact her to congratulate her, but Grace did not respond, causing concern and panic among her family members. Grace had kept her family updated about her trip, Prov. hiding them with details and photos. However, her family contacted Auckland police and reported Grace missing. Initially, detectives did not suspect Grace of any wrongdoing. They knew that Grace had not returned to her hostel on the night of December 1st and thought she might be staying with some new friends. They quickly searched for Grace on the night of her disappearance, using CCTV cameras across the city, and identified the mystery man with whom Grace had been seen that night as Jesse. That evening, Jesse met Grace. Before the appointment, he had gone to a local bar called the Bluestone Room, which was next to the City Life Hotel where he was staying. About half an hour before meeting Grace, Jesse was seen drinking 4 beers there, a lone figure in a pub further down Mill Lane. Meanwhile, Grace was waiting at the foot of the Sky Tower, where they had agreed to meet. This shows her anticipation of possibly starting a romantic relationship during the holiday. The Sky Tower is one of the most recognizable icons of New Zealand's largest city, dominating the skyline and serving as the focal point for many events. Most importantly, it is a public place where Grace would feel safer meeting someone. When Jesse arrived, the two recognized each other immediately. He hugged her as she smiled and walked toward him. The first place they visited was a burger restaurant and bar located on the first floor of the Sky City complex. During their time in Sky City, their every move was recorded by cameras. They were recorded as they went up the escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar, where they ordered cocktails and then sat together at a table to chat. About an hour and a half later, they left the bar and went to a nearby restaurant called the Mexican Cafe. After drinking 2 margaritas and a pitcher of sangria, they left the restaurant and went to the Bluestone Room, where Jesse had been drinking alone earlier. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse pulled Grace close to him and kissed her for about a second. In the next scene, they continued to kiss. Jesse then left, and Grace checked her phone, sending a final text message to her friend Anna. Grace then also left. Jesse used Grace's phone to post a message on her Facebook profile, saying she was beautiful and radiant. After around 9:30 p.m., the footage shows them leaving from the other side and going to the Mill Lane lobby of the City Life Hotel, then entering the elevator. Jesse searched for his key card as they headed toward room 308. It is unclear exactly what happened in room 308 after they arrived. However, by around 1:30 a.m., Grace had died in her room. It was confirmed that Grace never left the building, and Jesse did not call emergency services or any other assistance when she died. After Grace died, Jesse conducted several internet searches that demonstrated he was not only unconcerned about her death but was actively planning to cover it up. The next morning, after Grace had died in room 308, the man messaged another woman he had met on Tinder, trying to arrange a date for later that day. He was then caught on CCTV moving from his room to an entertainment outlet to buy a suitcase, then to a supermarket to buy some toiletries. He subsequently rented a red Toyota, and while Grace was still lying dead in the hotel room, he went out in the afternoon to meet the woman he had messaged earlier that day at a bar called The Dry in the upscale Auckland suburb of Ponsonby. The woman, who was a former reporter, appeared calm when she met Jesse at The Dry. During their conversation, he mentioned that all his friends were police officers and that a close friend was about to move to New Zealand to become a prosecutor. As they discussed a murder case she had worked on, he commented that it was a shame men could make mistakes and face long sentences. He then went on to talk about a man who had asked his girlfriend to have sex in a rough manner, which resulted in her death, making the woman feel uncomfortable. Jesse continued to lie throughout the conversation, making her increasingly uneasy. When she left the bar, although she felt very nervous, Jesse later texted her asking for another date, but she declined. After he returned to his room at around 5:45 p.m. on December 2nd, he rented a carpet cleaning device called the Rug Doctor to clean the carpet, under the pretext of removing red wine stains. After parking his rental car outside the hotel, he took a cart from the front desk, went upstairs, and returned with a cart carrying 2 large suitcases, one of which was identical to the one he had purchased earlier. He loaded the suitcases onto the cart and drove to a nearby parking lot. The silver suitcase contained Grace's body, while the second suitcase served as a cover to avoid suspicion. Throughout the day, surveillance cameras recorded him changing his clothes several times. Early the next morning, around 6:15 a.m., Jesse left the hotel and drove away, stopping only to buy a shovel at a store in the suburb. B.S. During this time, Grace's parents became concerned because she did not respond to their birthday greetings. 3 days later, Grace's parents reported her missing, and a massive search was launched. On December 7, 2018, Grace's father, David Millane, arrived in New Zealand and made an emotional appeal for any information regarding his daughter's disappearance. Jesse was questioned as a suspect individual after Grace's mother discovered a message he had left on her Facebook page at 9:29 p.m. on December 1st, just 11 minutes before they left the Bluestone room and went to his room. Detective Diana Levinson first questioned Jesse. He claimed that he had met Grace and parted ways with her at 10 p.m. on Saturday, which he stated was the last time he had seen her. However, detectives obtained CCTV footage from the hotel, proving that he had lied. During his second interview, he had no choice but to admit to killing Grace. However, he claimed that she had died accidentally during sex after S. He asking him to strangle her in an attempt to enhance their experience. Following the questioning, he was arrested, and police took Grace's body to the hospital. Grace's body was found around 4 p.m. on December 9th and buried on Scenic Drive in Waitakere Ranges Regional Park. A post-mortem examination was conducted in relation to Grace's death. It found that Grace had been strangled and had bruises on her body, indicating that she had been restrained. The murder trial took place in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Jesse attempted to explain Grace's death as an accident following a fight that went wrong, but the jury rejected his claim and found him guilty. Jesse, aged 28, was convicted of murder on November 22, 2019. During his trial, he was described as a man whose behavior was so pathological that some of the women he met or communicated with on Tinder felt very uncomfortable. It was later discovered that, before meeting Grace, he had taken another British tourist on a Tinder date and brought her to his hotel room in Auckland 8 months earlier. At the age of 21, Jesse sexually assaulted a tourist. When she refused to have sex with him, she cried and froze in fear. She kept the attack a secret until she recognized Jesse from media reports on the day he was charged with Grace's murder. A woman who had been communicating with him online became cautious about meeting him. She shared a series of messages in which he detailed his sexual preferences and admitted why he enjoyed them. It is speculated that Jesse's desire to dominate contributed to Grace's death. In a separate trial, he was convicted of assaulting his former partner. For months, he used violence, threatened her with a knife, and forced her to perform humiliating acts after telling her he had been sent by the CIA to kill her. Jesse refused to admit guilt and showed no remorse. On February 21, 2020, Jesse was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 17 years. Grace's story has raised awareness about the importance of safety for travelers, especially young women, when exploring the world.